the spot, Joseph Kabuleta. And I'll let you know, because A is deep and rich. There are not too many people that listen. One of the significant contributions in Turkey is the top sports commentary show that is on the spot, which he and Alan Sekomate, who came after the demise of, I think must have been, I don't remember the first name, but I also do know that it is only merit that Joseph is around because he must, and was meant to be in the cup that took out his colleague. It's another story how he missed that cup. Now, Kabuleta has been a Christian since 1992 and has been involved in several African ministries. In 2014, he started an hour-long radio show where he taught biblical prophecy under the name The Watchman. The show is known for expounding biblical prophecy and prophetic books such as Daniel, Ezekiel, Joel, and Revelations, of course. And conclusion, he then, which is very common of persons that study God. When you study God properly under prophets, you discover that there's a way in which human beings must be governed. And it is very natural for prophets to be unpopular with governments, whether it's Israel or Moses, if you may. Jeremiah was almost killed, he sort of survived. So prophets, there's a prophetic office, and as a student of theology myself, when people say religious leaders should seek out the politics, I ask them which Bible they're reading, because the one I know gives prophets that one role that they should stand. So it wasn't a surprise when Joseph became notorious for whistleblowing. Prophet on his Facebook post down Joseph Kabuleta weekly rants, very, very well-written gutsy stuff, in which he sharply criticized the government of Uganda for its corruption, gross mismanagement of resources and covert operations that he believes undermine the prosperity of Uganda. On July 2019, Kabuleta posted a weekly rant on Facebook titled "The Mafia Empire and the Transition," where he highlighted a purported move by President Museveni to have his son, General Museveni succeed him. On July 12, 2019, at about 50 hours EAT, while at a coffee shop in Kampala, Kabuleta was picked up by plainclothes operatives and taken to on location and was later released after 4 nights of very interesting stuff, quote unquote. As an avid lover of sports, especially soccer, his favorite teams are Bayern Munich, FC, and Middlesbrough. I don't know why someone supports Middlesbrough, but that's his team. On an international scene, and SC Villa on the local scene. The old SC Villa, not this one, of course. Joseph and their plans for a sports football tournament in his home district, Poema Dab, Joseph Christmas tournament. And of course, we'll be asking questions later of his better loves. He has played some tennis, you would not believe, and loves cappuccinos. He is fond of Bayern Munich and Middlesbrough, and his favorite player is not Lionel Messi, neither is he Cristiano Ronaldo, but George Weah, for very obvious reasons. He's not a guy. I wouldn't be surprised that he loves Serena Williams, and I also love Rafael Nadal, like he does. Everybody who understands tennis likes Rafael Nadal. And he loves Tiger Woods because he has interest in golf that he hasn't yet begun. It is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome my friend and yours, the presidential candidate like no other, Joseph Kabuleta. Listen, I'd like to ask for another. Fantastic. The Bible has been very clear, we must be as wise as serpents. I'll give it a small prayer. You're very welcome. We're changing, and this is as far as serious conversations are concerned. Anything about you I didn't say? I said quite much.
You say quite a bunch that is not true. First of all, I was supported as civil, I support the CCD. And after I don't think there's anything like that.
You have started. You have started.
It's like SSC.
What?
Yeah, as far as I supported when I started enjoying football in Uganda, and I really love it. There's only one team that has made me spend sleepless nights, and I've had games played over and over in my dreams that I watched SSC playing and they did not win. And I had all the chances that they could have scored replaying in my mind for all the night. All the team that is SSC. The other thing, why Messi or Ronaldo are my favorite players, because they didn't go become president. George Weah, as you know, went to become president.
Have you still saying on sports before we move into serious matters? I have never in my mind gotten over Dr. Matthias sitting on top of a ball waiting to go and win a Champions League trophy that he never beat because of certain Manchester United had other ideas. How do you recover from that? Because I have never gotten over how badly just didn't win that day.
You know, the interesting thing that they have given Manchester United
For this second.
for that's 1999
Yes.
and up to now, every time they lose, they give me a lot of joy. And thankfully, that is a lot more frequent these days than it used to be. So I have a lot of joy in things. I don't know why.
I mean, of course, Bayern Munich went on to win another trophy, but I don't know why. I think largely because they have beaten Arsenal again, similar style, onto beating Manchester United. I never know why Manchester United is the Manchester United. But these days, for what they're going, I think they are paying for the season of 1999. And to that, I always say,
And you know they never win right after that.
they can't.
And actually, what every manager of Bayern Munich would do is replay a moment. And these players that we start up beat Manchester United every time they get. Instead of after that.
Anyway, Joseph Yoder is the candidate and I'd like us to start with this way. Uganda is a unique country because it is a nation as an idea that is not local. Uganda is a colonial idea, and Uganda never starts either to accept or discuss that idea. And as such, presidents, probably including yourself, come in chair, go outcast. We've certainly more presidents than everybody in East Africa. Do you think the problem is leaders, or could also the problem be our history and the land? Let's begin there before we get into the conversation.
I believe the problem is a number of things, because we inherited a kind of dysfunctionality from the colonialists, because they wanted to impose something on Uganda that was not working and that was bound to explode at some stage. Because the idea of they wanted to do it the way it is in the UK, and if we don't give up, we can have an executive prime minister who is really the head of the state, so to speak, but then there is a president who is ceremonial, some of the term president and also some prime minister. So kind of they are not supposed to be like the non-advocate of the way it is in the UK, and this one is actually the one branch government, which is what we thought it was an independence. But it wasn't good one. Something had to change because there were different centers of power and they were conflicting, and something had to change one way or the other, and it did. So there was, unfortunately, in 1966. So there have been a number of issues that have happened as a result. But now I want us to come closer, because all the problems we've had since independence, all post-independent countries went through a certain phase in which the coastal leaders who led to independence, who felt they had the right to lead until they died. And for the most part, actually, most of those nations allowed those leaders, because of the monumental achievement bringing independence, to let them lead until they were dead. For instance, Jomo Kenyatta was not lead until he died, and Nyerere gave up on his own, and so on and so forth. So there were all those, and that courtesy was denied to Okoche because of the problem by me. But he also had that mindset of identity to independence and have a right to continue and moving on and on. So that's why even after being he had the right to come back. But then after that, we had an opportunity to start afresh. And now somebody asked me that the years of independence is Uganda independent. I said, unfortunately now, we had a leader in Museveni who came past all this time and was thinking like a post-independent African president, thinking that he has the right to live for life. Okay? And yet he did not have behind him the monumental achievement of bringing independence. So now the other people were kind of left to go all the Kabuletas and so on and so, because they had brought that thing. Mandela told them you have left, until he wanted to be quit and so on. In fact, that practice has been extended to ANC because of that, the monumental achievement of delivering, at the end of the apartheid and free rule. So now Museveni comes without any achievement of the like, but wanting the same courtesy, and as somehow imposed. So as a result of it, we are actually going through things now which we should have gone through in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s, and at least ended in the 80s. Because now those countries like Kenya, after they have been through those leaders, the leaders, then they go into some kind of, okay, maybe so I have problems there, but there are so many others like Tanzania, like Botswana, which now had moved into a functional democracy, and now started having clear changes of leadership after one person had outlived, the so-called reward for leading the country independence. Now, so because of that, a lot of the problems that we face now in that country are because Museveni should have been the one who started in 1962 for him to have post-police thinking now, and for him to have been kind of acceptable. But now, when we expected that now we've been through that, we are going to have a transitional government and then pass down.
Shown and death to further a political agenda.
Okay.
That's what guerrilla warfare does. Okay, so in so doing, they had to blow up buses, they were blowing up, and these are things which they were doing. And somehow they were wiped away because peace came. But let's not forget that they were blowing up buses, they were killing people, and just to cause the disruption that made everybody uncomfortable so that you can roll out the red carpet for Museveni to come as a savior.
And I'd like to take you to what you just mentioned, which I want to pick on. Gullible Ugandans. Is it still possible for us, in the context in which we are, to have a presidential candidate like you, who gets onto the campaign trail, and on the basis of explanations and campaigns, you don't have a military background, win over the support of Ugandans for you to be elected and win and be announced president?
With him there, here's the thing. I don't, unlike other people, and I've met so many of the other opposition people who are standing against him, I don't even consider myself to be standing against him, because I actually think he's a fading mist. And I have no plans for Museveni in my life anytime after 2021. And now that is the basis of my campaign.
Yes.
Because I am not thinking Museveni. Museveni is a fading mist. And now it is so difficult, even for the people who hate him, to see past him. Now that's what I find a problem with, because we have to think about a Uganda past Museveni. The man is on his last lungs. And we are here planning Museveni. We are a nation with a median age of 15.8. Median age of 15.8. We have so many young people, and we have no, Museveni is a fading mist. I don't see him past 2021. I am planning for a Uganda without him, that's the Uganda I'm talking about.
In that sense, aren't you one of you, or literally alone?
I am alone.
Because to be honest, you are one of you who are even reluctant to mention him. The rest, the moment they start to speak, he's one of their first 5 words.
Now, why would I talk about a mist which is going to fade the next day? When you wake up in the morning and you're driving through a valley and there is a mist, and you know as soon as you hit up the hill, the mist is going to vanish. Are you going to spend hours talking about that mist? So I am not thinking about Museveni. And as you said, I am the only one who is actually thinking that we have to start discussing issues that affect our country post-Museveni. Because at some stage he's going to have to be just a bad part of our history. But now what shall we have at that time? Shall we be ready for the exit of him? Or has he kept a mist, has he kept this mist all over our faces that we cannot see beyond him? Okay. Now I can't see beyond him, and I'm seeing much farther than him. And I am seeing a wonderful Uganda, which is what we should be talking about.
And that's the Uganda I want us to get into now that we are talking beyond an individual and getting to our nation that we all love and want to see improving. Now, handling law and order, we're talking the police, is a global problem.
Yes.
Whether it is in the United States, where I think that's where Black Lives Matter comes from. There the issues are different. Here the issues are different. If you became president, how would you deal with policing?
The reason there is a problem with policing is because there are underlying issues. For instance, like what you talked about in the US, it's all underlying issues related to race, which we do not have here. Now here it is underlying issues related to bad governance, which we shall have solved at that time. Now policemen are not trained like that. Actually, policemen are trained different. There is a lot of military in police, and you know that. And a lot of the people who are doing so many of the things, some of them are actually military people, because their training is different. And it is...
Our first IGP was a brigadier. He was a white man.
Was it?
He was a brigadier. He was a white man.
So now that's my point. Why should you have a military person leading police? Because these are two different institutions, and their training is different. Talk to a typical policeman, he's telling you how he's going to gather evidence, maybe arrest a suspect, and present evidence which is going to be accepted by the state attorney, and which is admissible, by which they can charge somebody. That's how a policeman thinks, because that's the training. Now a military person are those who attack the parliament and so on. They are not policemen, they're actually military people. And now that's one of the things which Museveni has bastardized.
So how do you fix that?
By first of all separating military from police.
1, 2.
Number 2, giving totally new orders for policemen, because I have been in positions where I went to a place where I'd gone to campaign, and I was actually designated to be in that town campaigning, and the DPC said, you are not going to enter in this town. I told you, how? Look at the electoral commission map. I'm supposed to be here today.
What reason did he give?
None. That's the point. Now none. He says you're not entering. He blocked all the roads into town. I saw his men cooking the tear gas canisters. I looked around, I saw there was going to be a lot of confusion. So a lot of people had gathered, so I just spoke to them briefly. But now, even as you're going, he whispers in your ear and says, listen, I have to protect my job. So because they have been given instructions not to let campaigns go on. Now, the sad thing is this. If they kill people in the process of inhibiting campaigns, they are not going to be charged with anything. But if they allow campaigns to go on peacefully, they will be charged. That is the kind of instructions they are under. And you know who is giving the instructions?
In the press briefing
and you know who is giving the instructions? A military man who is the deputy IGP. Who is a military man. He's not a policeman.
We don't have proof of that, do we?
Well, you didn't say it, I said it. So you can say Kabuleta said. You don't need proof for anything I say. You just pin it on me and we shall go with that.
In the press briefing we had, both the CDF and the IGP hinted on the idea that there is going to be an investigation. There are SOPs, I've got 2 books of those, and that if there is any officer who did not stick to the rules of engagement, they will take them on. Do you believe in those statements?
No. Have you ever heard of anyone who has been taken on? There were people who were killed.
The investigation is going on.
No, there were people who were killed in Bulang in 2006. Who was charged? There are people who have been killed. The walk-to-work protests. There were people who were killed. Have you heard of any policeman being charged
On
with that?
January 15th, if you are the president, how do you deal with all that?
I first of all change the atmosphere. Now I will be the president-elect on January 15th. So maybe we are talking. Maybe we are talking May 14th.
Of course, you start to plan.
Okay, May 14th. So, okay, if January 14th, if I'm president.
As president-elect, you already start to plan.
I start to plan.
Yes.
Now, do you know how the whole atmosphere would change if people knew that these military people and the Bushmen who invaded our peace 35 years ago have gone? Do you know how all of a sudden atmosphere changes?
But they don't go, because if they are still in the military, they continue to be serving officers. What do you do with them?
No, they are there, but they continue being serving officers. But what's at the top is changing, because the military, of course, is. And here is the problem. Here is the thing which people have, because I've been asked in places that what are you going to do? The military belongs to one man. I say no, it doesn't. The military men are not fools. I've spoken to them privately. Okay, I have spoken to some of them privately. The army are people who have businesses, they have lives, they have wives, they have children in this country. They are not going to drown this country over a dying man. They are not going to. They will go with whoever has the mandate of the people. They are not going to be the proverbial fly which followed the corpse into the what? Into the grave. They are clever people. They are younger. They are not 76 or 90, whatever it is his age is. They are younger people. They have children. They have, businesses. They want to live their lives in this country. So when they see the will of the people going in a certain direction, the army will follow along.
So you trust their training and professionalism that once you become president-elect and subsequently president, it will be easy for you to discuss with professionals on a new direction.
It is not about trusting their professionalism. It is about trusting their love for themselves. This is what I'm telling you. They don't want to destroy this country because they are going to live here. So the one motive you can always count on is selfishness.
Okay.
So they are selfish enough to want to protect this country because this is where they are doing their business. This is where they are thriving. This is where their children are going to school. So I trust their selfishness. And there is no better foundation than selfishness. What is good for somebody. And what's good for them at that time will be to support whichever government the people will have chosen.
Well, talking selfishness, the Bible could also complement what you're saying, that love others as you love yourself.
Exactly.
Maybe that's a very good way of putting it. We have a pandemic that continues to skyrocket. Yesterday, I was interviewing Professor Rhoda Wanyenze. She is the head of Makerere Institute of Public Health, and she's saying that the numbers are going in all the wrong directions. Actually, the predictions are that January, February, and March will be the worst possible. And then, of course, you most probably will be president-elect. What's your plan of dealing with the pandemic? Probably your job is more likely to be a sort of Biden approach.
Let me tell you, you can call me whatever you want, COVID skeptic or whatever. You are not going to see me putting on a mask. I don't do that. I do not. Let me tell you.
You don't believe there's a pandemic?
No, there's something like that, which comes and pulls and
Mr.
wait. Let me explain myself.
People have died.
Let me explain myself. First of all, the worldwide survival rate for COVID is 99%. We as a country have had bigger problems, and we still have bigger problems. There are more people who die from poverty than from COVID. Fact. There are more people, there are more women who die giving birth than from COVID.
Fact.
There are more people who die from malaria than from COVID.
The numbers argue so.
So why must...
There are actually probably more people who die from road accidents than we have lost to COVID.
Thank you very much. Now,
the
here's the
statistics
thing.
don't lie. But what I want you to address...
So let me... I'm addressing that.
I'm coming. And I'm sorry to interject. We've got to be sensitive to families that have lost people to COVID in your explanations.
Okay, we've got to be sensitive to women who have died giving birth in my explanations. We've got to be sensitive to people who have died of malaria in my explanations. I don't want us to put COVID on a pedestal where it is not. Okay? Let me tell you something. For a young Ugandan, I told you we have a median age of 15.8. Uganda.
Fact.
The median age for Europe is 40.
Fact.
They have so many old people which we don't have. Now, for somebody 40 years and younger, which happens to be almost 80% of Ugandans, you have a better, you are more likely to be struck down dead by lightning than to die of COVID. That is from the statistics.
Of course,
now you've mentioned
apart from the odd ones,
whom you also care about.
Yes.
You understand? Now, when we are doing the cares, there are people whom they call vulnerable people, and even those under 40. For instance, if you are in the latter stages of HIV and your immunity has been severely compromised, you're there. If you have, heavy diabetes and your immunity has been compromised, or old age. But aside from that, we actually have real problems. But the trouble is, I look around. And I'll tell you this, somebody was telling me that drug companies, like for instance, Joint Medical Stores, made a 300% profit this year because of COVID. There are laboratories and all this. When I was going for the presidential nomination, they had to check me. So I called this guy to come and, do the COVID test because it was a prerequisite. And I see him coming in all his gloves and what, and I pay him 300,000. And he has a whole line of people to test that day, either they are traveling or what. The man is making millions every day. You think he is not going to want COVID to continue? Are you kidding me? And the minister of, you saw when Sheikh Muzata died, before anybody had spoken about the cause of death, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Diana Twine, tweets that he died of COVID. Stupidity. Wait. Because
we could do with better language.
No, it's okay. Don't worry. Put it on me. Pin it on me. Because she is one of the beneficiaries of COVID. Now there are so many beneficiaries of COVID, and they are stopping people who are just looking to earn a living from going to earn a living.
So are you saying we should concentrate on the other thing?
We should concentrate on the bigger problems that we have as a country, which are causing bigger deaths than we have here. I'll tell you this. This is the destruction of COVID that nobody talks about. Somebody was telling me just the other day that her uncle had malaria but hadn't noticed it and went to the hospital. And they said, COVID. And he said, it's not COVID. I don't have any symptoms of COVID. But because they are desperate to pile up the statistics of COVID, the man almost died of malaria. Then now when he was finally almost dying, they tested for malaria and it was plus. Then they put him on anti-malarials and he walked out of the hospital. He was going to go down as a COVID death, yet the man has died of a curable sickness. Because certain people have to earn money of COVID. We have to be very serious about these things. This is a whole business. There are so many people who are smiling to the bank, and they are going to put us down this drain where people are not earning a living. Industries are being destroyed. Hotels, people have not gone back to work. Diners, because people have to go back at 9 p.m. I don't know what even curfew has to do with COVID. Does it spread faster at night? There's a lot of stupidity when it comes to COVID. So I want us to be people of common sense. Now,
do you believe in statements made by international doctors like Dr. Fauci? You are taking the Donald Trump approach. You seem not to be interested in listening to the World Health Organization. You're saying that Uganda has bigger problems in maternal and infant mortality and malaria. Mosquito nets are being distributed and accidents. How would you deal with world-renowned doctors and what they've been saying about COVID?
Dr. Fauci is not in Uganda. He does not understand the problems that a Ugandan doctor knows.
Professor Wanyenze is in Uganda.
Well, let me tell you, there's a lot of, conflict in all this. COVID is the only virus where you find politicians no more than doctors. And that's the truth. It is very political. Because Fauci has said statements which are shocking. In as far as COVID is not as big a disease sickness as we thought it was. He said that himself. But the politics overcomes him. Why? Because there are some people who are enjoying the whole thing. Because it gives them power. Okay? It gives them power. Imagine something which can get you and they lock you up for 2 weeks. Now they can come and say, if they don't want me to campaign for 2 weeks, they come and say, you came in contact with somebody who has COVID, isolate, and I can't campaign for 2 weeks. I mean, there's nothing like that which, if you cannot detain somebody in our laws for 48 hours without presenting them in court.
Well,
but
so already taken
COVID,
out Donald Trump as president.
Well, but he got cured of it. The man is 74.
I mean, he lost the presidency because of it.
To
a certain extent.
I'm not so sure because of that. But then, he did not lose his life. He's 74. He's among those whom you'd think in 3 days he was up and was out campaigning. 3 days, a 74-year-old. And you tell me that Uganda's 15-year-old teenagers, 30 years old, are somehow very at risk because of COVID. Let's move on to things which actually matter. Because
fantastic. Now we know your position on COVID. Let's get to something else. You're a man of faith, and you lead a faith institution. You will be in charge of a secular nation in which there are people like Mama Fina,
yes,
who believe in what they believe.
Yes.
It then suggests that as the leader of the nation, you'll have to make compromises because you're a leader for everybody. Unless you're going to turn Uganda into a faith-based institution. How would you keep that balance between your faith beliefs and your role as president for everybody?
There are things which are personal for me. Faith is the most personal thing because all of us stand before God independently. We don't stand as a group. There's nobody who believes they stand as a group.
Fact.
So the thing is, when I'm president, I am not, I'm not Archbishop of Uganda. I am president. I know the difference, Samson. I know the difference. I'm not standing for Archbishop or for High Priest of Uganda. I'm standing for president. And I have nothing wrong with people like Mama Fina practicing their thing if that's what they have chosen. Okay? Because everybody has a right to choose and worship the way they want. Everybody, including myself. Okay? So I am not going to solve spiritual problems in a political way. Spiritual problems are spiritual problems. If I'm going to preach to Mama Fina the gospel, I'm just preaching to her. If she believes it, so very good. She gets born again. If she doesn't, she does that. I'm not going to use politics to solve spiritual problems. And it would be.
Do you think it would be patronizing individuals and unbiblical for you to do that?
To do what?
To spiritualize political issues.
No, it is wrong. It is wrong. I am not coming to convert people to a religion using politics. I'm not coming into a theocracy. I am coming into politics. And what I believe at an individual level is between me and my God. Okay? And perhaps the people who believe with me. But at a political level, I am here to solve the problems of this country, especially economic problems, and to put money in people's pockets, regardless of what their faith is. And I have visited people of different faiths. The other day I was in Chibuli visiting the Supreme Mufti. I respect people of every faith. I've visited people of all sorts of faith, and there are others who are coming up. I respect everybody in their faith. Absolutely respect them. So I am not coming to try and change anything. Actually, when I was with him, he was telling me, okay, briefly, not as deeply as I would have wanted, some of the issues that they have as Muslims.
Okay.
And I see myself as somebody who can, make their life better as Muslims, even if I am not one of them.
Okay.
But as a president, I can guarantee you that Muslims will be much happier under the presidency of Joseph Kabuleta than they have ever been under the presidency of Museveni. That one is absolutely guaranteed. All the problems they have been suffering from, how they have been pressed and oppressed and things like that, all that will end, and they will feel that they are free to exercise themselves like they want to. So I am not standing for high priest. I'm standing for president.
Okay. The Bible has a very interesting approach to sin and sins. And that's why I'm going into the area of your human rights policy and press freedoms. Also addressing the issue of those with a different sexual orientation. How would you go about that? Because some have spiritualized the abuse of rights of different persons.
I'm not going to abuse anybody's right. That's the thing.
Even those.
Even who?
The Those with other sexual orientations.
You mean like homosexuals and so on?
The LGBT community.
The LGBT community. Now, here's the thing. There are laws in this country which were put there before and which can be discussed. There are laws in this country which stipulate all those things. And actually, those laws are still in the books. Okay? And I can only govern in as far as the laws of this country permit me to. And if those
irrespective of the processes by which they came.
No, if those laws, if the parliament, of which I am not going to be a part, goes and changes those laws, then I govern accordingly. It is not the responsibility. It is not the responsibility. It is not the responsibility of the president to change the laws of the nation. Okay? In other places, those laws have been changed, and I'm sure the political leaders in those places are bound by the new laws that come up as a result. But I can only be bound by the laws that exist right now.
So you will go with the laws. But you raised something that I want to take you on. It is not the responsibility of the president to change the laws that govern the country. But for you to be able to govern the way you want to govern, you might need to be equipped with requisite laws. Don't you think that there is a role for you to come together with the members of parliament to say, this is how I want to lead the country, but I don't have requisite laws. Can you help me get to that direction?
Yes, one of the things we are going to have to reverse will be some of the things that were changed specifically for the benefit of President Museveni, like the term limits, perhaps even age, and those things which were specifically changed for him. Because what you have
You're
to understand,
comfortable with the Public Order Management Act?
No, all those were changed specifically for him. I just mentioned a few. There were so many. Now we have to move into a period of true democracy and freedom. Those two go together. Now, for instance, everything that he has done as a president, you have to know this, has been for one and one singular purpose, and that is to vest every power in the office of the presidency. That is what he does. Everything he does. That's why he has even attacked traditional institutions. He has despoiled certain kingdoms. He has despoiled religions. Okay? That's one of the reasons why even Muslims are crying, because he wants to take away every center of authority and vest it in himself. He has destroyed the local governments. Local governments used to have a lot of power to do a lot of things within their jurisdiction, from roads to so on. Somehow they don't have any of that power any longer. He has despoiled the judiciary. So many of them are scared of giving decisions because they can be done to whatever. And of course he uses the power of financial sabotage. He can destroy all your money and do what. So parliament is in his fist, judiciary is in his fist, all institutions are in his fist. So now when we move towards a time of democracy, and it has to come with somebody who has a will to create that democracy, and there has to be political will in that direction. It involves freedom of worship, freedom of expression, freedom of gathering, parliament having its true authority to oversee, okay, to appropriate, and all those other things where they actually have bite, where you don't pass a budget unless the parliament has, gone through it and appropriated it. Because you can't just do what you want as it is now, right now, where you're asking for a supplementary budget 3 months into the new year. You've just been given a huge classified budget. 3 months even before the ink that wrote the budget has dried up, you want a supplementary budget. That's the sort of thing we have been through. So we have to give the judiciary back their powers, where they can make rulings that hurt politics, like it is in true democracy. We have to give parliament back its power, where they can actually legislate on things that are not comfortable to the executive. And then we have to give the local governments their powers. We have to give the traditional institutions back their power. There's the religious institutions back their power, and all these people, so that we have a true society where there are different centers of power, because these people account for different things. You can't want to destroy a kingdom, because people get from a kingdom what they will never get from a government.
Okay. Let me ask, there's a school of thought that for Uganda to be fixed, that's what the school of thought argues, you need a benevolent dictator. Because we have so many people with power that are untouchable. You have people who learned to drive and never learned to drive on the right side of the road. You have young people on borders who don't believe that you can make money at the same time keeping traffic rules. And that school of thought argues that to be able to fix a mess in which disorder has become the new order, you need a president that has so much power. You argue that office has too much power, you want most of the power out. What's your comment in respect to that school of thought?
That power doesn't have to be with the president. It can be with the police to bring those people to order. Okay. Have those policemen been empowered to actually account for those people who drive on the wrong side of the road? Don't they receive phone calls from somewhere? And
but the police themselves are also driving on the wrong side of the road.
It all comes with a certain mindset. I'll give you an example. There was a time I used to go and watch football with some people, and all of them would come and we sit down, watch football at night, and they are drinking, and they leave drunk, and they jump into their cars and drive. Until somehow they brought these breatherizers, and police were all over the place. And within a matter of a few weeks, all those people would leave their cars home and come with, Ubers and so on.
Okay.
I think special hires at the time, there was not so much Uber. Special hires. And
so they just got tired of paying?
No, it took just a little bit. Let me tell you, students, take away the discipline, take away the bit of punishment for wrongdoing. Everybody goes down that direction.
Okay.
We all have that rebellious thing in us where you want to do things different. But then also, if we are going to order our society, we have to tell people you cannot, drink and drive. You cannot drive when you are at a certain limit of alcohol. And then when you you don't think you're going to lecture them the way you do in church. Please don't drink and drive, and they listen to you. No. You
just make sure the law works.
You just put their policemen. The policemen will enforce it. Everybody needs enforcement. Now, within 2 weeks, I was seeing people who would get into their cars drunk and drive home. And you even wonder how he gets home. But somehow they did. The next day, you see the guy, because they are breatherizers, they are people on the road, and they actually were keeping people in the cells overnight, and nobody wants that. So within a short time, everybody was calling special hires to come and take them home after they had finished, because they didn't want to do that. So just a little bit of discipline, and our society can be ordered. It is not so difficult.
Okay. Let's get to marginalized communities in Uganda, persons with disabilities, albinos, the elderly, women. You're very, very big on the poor. What's your plan for those?
Now, persons with disabilities, I've met a number of them. I've met their representatives, and they are the most marginalized people, actually, by the way, because in other places, they are given a certain special treatment, where they have, some sort of special parking places. Every building has to have a place where they can pass, with their wheelchairs and so on. But right now, we are not in a position where we can start demanding that every building that is, some of the modern ones have, abilities for the persons living with disabilities, but not all of them can have it in our current state. However,
can't we demand?
We can demand going forward.
Okay.
But then there are buildings which are there right now, which are not going to have that. They don't even have an allowance for it. But we can do this. And I told them.
And I'll get to that because of your background on whether some buildings, some of what has been done wrong should be raised down. We'll get to that.
So first with the persons with disabilities. Yes. But here's one thing we can do actually, and not that difficult. What they call assistive devices. All of them, they need wheelchairs, clutches, sticks, and so on. They can get those free from the government. Okay. And I pledge to give all persons living with disabilities free
wheelchairs,
free assistive devices.
Okay.
Every device they need to assist them. Some don't need wheelchairs, some need sticks, some need clutches, and all those things. We can now, Kabuleta's government will give disabled people, all of them, because they have a register of persons living with disabilities. Even on the district level. They're a very organized group, by the way. So that's the first place we can start and say, just tell us how many people need the above things. And we give them to them as a government. At least, and not the old ones, of too much money, gachifuba. Real, a bit modern ones, so that they can at least enjoy
They're automated ones lately.
Okay, yes.
Let's talk about foreign policy. Uganda is in a very interesting situation because lately, I think if you've been following current events, there are a few individuals whose names have been put on the line, motions going on in the United States. Yes, we're a sovereign country. Talking of the Magnitsky Act, Uganda has troops in Somalia. There could be some in DRC. We are in a very interesting position with a failed government in South Sudan. I'm not so sure that works. There's very near chaos in DR Congo. We're not on talking terms. I think we are or we are not, depending on who you listen to, with Rwanda. What's your foreign policy plan?
Now, that's okay. In honesty, that's a very large question. You
Sure.
understand? But I'll start by saying this: we have 35 embassies, Uganda, in various places, and now our diplomacy is supposed to be moving away from political diplomacy to economic diplomacy. So we are supposed to be having embassies in places where we have good business, where those embassies can actually finance themselves by the amount of business they bring to Uganda. Now, I'll give you an example. They are starting a 36th embassy in Angola, which we didn't have, just because they are looking for a place for Kaka Bajenda, the man who has been in ISO terrorizing everybody. They want to give him some kind of retirement place, and you start an embassy for that. And now that is the thinking of what our foreign policy has been, because of the 36 ambassadors.
This includes the high commissioners.
High commissioners.
Okay.
Only 2 of them are career diplomats. The rest are either failed soldiers, failed politicians, people who are being given some kind of retirement thing, or people who they want away from Uganda. We don't want you here. So you give him, you give them an embassy so that they can go and keep themselves there. Now the trouble with that is they go and the embassy is not funded because there is no enough business in that country that is commensurate with, to have an embassy. For instance, we have an embassy in Iran. We don't have a lot of business with Iran. We do not have an embassy.
There used to be an Iranian trade fair. I think you and I remember those.
I think that was a personal, whatever. But at the country level, I'm not so sure we have too much business with Iran. We have a lot of business with Israel right now. For one, they are going to manage our elections, for good or for bad. But we have a lot of business with them. They are involved in a lot of our buying minerals from us and a lot of peculiar minerals in this place. We do not have an embassy in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, whichever it is it would be. And Israel does not have an embassy in Uganda. So we don't understand what is the basis.
I think they have a consulate.
But it's in the process of being, it's been there and thereabouts. Since expelled them, by the way, it's not been there. They have been flirting with starting it here. And I think it would be an important one.
So which nations do you think we need an embassy there? You seem to be planning to close some quite a bunch.
If we cannot afford some, we close them. Because embassies, even these ones here, they earn their money from here. A lot of those embassies are financed by money from here through visas and so on, and the businesses they have here, and the interests they have here. You do not put up an embassy to spend money. You put up an embassy to have, it's just like starting a branch of a business. You do it to earn money. This is the modern thing. It might be different from what it has been before, political diplomacy. But now in this one, embassies have to earn their right to exist by how many tourists are coming from your country to Uganda, what business are we getting from the country where your embassy is in Uganda, can your embassy finance itself in regard to how much money it brings to us, or is it a net profit or a net loss embassy? That way we actually start thinking through, diplomacy, number one. And second,
so
then also...
Just on that one, and I'd like to expand it because I think I like what you're saying, is you are saying the ambassador has KPIs, key performance indicators.
Yes.
If you don't make the money,
yes,
we either close you and recall you, or we have somebody who has a better plan to run that embassy come to replace you.
Exactly. Because we are not putting you there to just spend money. Because they are very underfunded, you know that. They are some of the most, you've traveled, you've seen Ugandan embassies, very underfunded, almost decrepit and abandoned in that state. And the ambassadors, because they are not even career diplomats, are busy doing hammering deals. And they have become deal masters in those countries. They're actually even an embarrassment to the country because they use their diplomatic immunity to do things which are of a very private nature and sometimes very unscrupulous. So we have to, first of all, make sure, because just let me say this, all the ambassadors have got their career diplomats. There are people who do this kind of thing. And then we can have the key performance indicators. Then we can see what if you are in a country and we believe we have a lot more potential we can get from that country, but it's not coming because of you, then we will call you, put somebody else there. But if we see the country has no benefit to us as Uganda, rather than continuing spending money on it, we will close down the embassy. But then also we have a foreign minister who cannot travel to America, otherwise he will be arrested because he was involved in stealing.
You said you didn't want to go there, you wanted
a certified thief.
Yes.
For a foreign minister. He cannot even negotiate anything because foreign ministers negotiate things like visas and so on. Now go to Rwanda, they negotiated with America, and Rwandans who get American visas for the most part get 10 years. They don't have to keep on going there. They get 10 years multiple transit because Rwanda negotiated and said the Americans who are coming for the gorillas and so on will make life easier for you. And they are in the process of negotiating. Uganda is the most exploited country when it comes to foreign embassies. There are embassies which are charging a lot of money, charging people visa fees, charging people DHL money to take your documents to another country where they are going to be taken. They are keeping passports sometimes for as long as 3 months. That is abuse of human rights. How can you keep somebody's passport for 3 months? So on what purpose? In those 3 months, I want to travel somewhere else. Now, this is a big problem because I'll give you an example. There is a gentleman whom I knew who was involved in some kind of trade fair, and he had organic stuff which he thought of going to market in different countries. So he went and asked for a visa to Sweden. Okay, and it is issued by Norway. Now they give all this litany of things which you have to bring before you're even accepted, before they even take your papers. Now you pay the money, They have contracted a local company here to take those papers. Guess who pays that company? The visa applicant. You pay for the visa, you pay for DHL fees to take your papers wherever it is. With your passport, whatever it is they have chosen to put the embassy.
And you're a third world country.
And you're a third world country, and you pay for your the DHL fees back. That's not cheap. By the end of the day, you've paid for so many things. And then I discovered that country even has a 95% rejection rate for Ugandan passports. They are just stealing money. They are just stealing money from Ugandans. Now, we can change that if we had a true foreign minister, where we say, it is your country, you have the right to decide who goes there. However, you don't have the right to keep on taking visa fees and not giving visas. Tell Kasumba you've qualified for a visa, now bring the fees. If he has not qualified, why do you take his money? Because that is theft. Now, we are not going to have so-called first world countries stealing money from us in the name of visas, and then they are rejecting 95% of those applications. Now, those are things which can be changed if we had a proper foreign ministry. And those are some of the things which I have to start with, because then we cannot have a scenario where you keep somebody's passport for 3 months. In that time, he has to travel other places. It's not just your country. I mean, is he going to heaven?
So your argument
is your country heaven that he has to 3 months?
I'm not so sure heaven would use the same treatment for admission.
If you told me 3 months heaven, I would say no problem, take it. But any other place, why do you hold my passport for 3 months?
So you're basically saying
you need a week to decide whether you're giving me the visa or not. If you're not giving to me, bring back my passport. There are other countries which I would rather travel to for holiday if you don't want. But don't charge people visa fees unless the visa has been issued.
Okay. You raise a very interesting one. If there are visa fees and I have no visa, then what fees are they?
Exactly.
Because they are visa fees.
Those are theft fees.
Interesting one. So you're saying that is a problem solved by getting a better negotiator. Let me give you an example. Maybe it speaks to what you're saying. The most immediate French ambassador, Her Excellency Stéphanie Rivoire, was from civil society, NGO world, before she had her first assignment as an ambassador here in Uganda. And if you saw the way she went about her business, it was completely revolutionary. Is that the sort of approach you're saying we want a pragmatic person inside our embassy who is going to go out there, change our image, get Uganda doing business in a country?
Exactly. But then the pragmatism starts with the appointment. Now, what kind of ambassador is Kaka Bajenda going to be? What does he know about diplomacy? He only knows how to tie people's cuffs and knock them, and torture people. How can you send somebody?
We could do well to stay out of there.
Listen, how can you send somebody who is an expert in torture as an ambassador? What kind of thinking is that? He doesn't know anything about diplomacy. That's the last thing he knows. So why appoint him as an ambassador? Now, the reason those people appoint somebody like that who has been in the NGO world is because probably they see the biggest business they have in Uganda is with the NGOs. So they look around their pool of diplomats, trained diplomats, and they say, who would be best suited for the NGO world? And then they pick us specifically to come to Uganda for that purpose. Now, that's how you do diplomacy. Because then they know maybe we have so many NGOs running in Uganda. This woman would be in position to understand that, and she's one of our diplomats. So they send her. Now, why are we sending failed politicians as ambassadors? We have degraded. It's one of the things that has been totally bastardized by this Museveni regime.
So who would you send to the US? What kind of individual would you send to the US and UK? Top of mind.
I can't mention names. But
no, not mine. Individual. Kind of individual, depending on what your interest would be.
Number one, when we are talking about US, there are so many things we are talking about. That's a country that our embassy there should be comfortably able to fund itself. Number one, by changing our image. So it has to be somebody who is a diplomat, perhaps who has been in the process of PR, or, changing the image of the country. Number of tourist arrivals. We task them, make sure we have this number of tourist arrivals from America, because that's a very huge market.
Okay.
Make sure you sell all these number of things. And there's a lot of business in America, honestly. Those are,
fantastic. Let's move along, talking about, I think, something you're very passionate about. You'll get excited about my next question. Dealing with unemployment. Unemployment is not only a local problem. It is a problem in the United States, it's a problem in the UK. When I was in the UK, there was a problem of unemployment. Somehow we immigrants found jobs, but there was unemployment. That's a story for another day. But there's genuinely unemployment in Uganda. Do you believe it is there, or you believe it is more of a pseudo problem that can actually easily be solved?
No, of course it's a very big problem, and actually it's a huge problem, because I'll tell you, every year we churn out about 606,000 people into the job market as a country.
Only?
606 people who are trained, 606,000. That's not only, that's a very big number.
We could do more if our education system was working a lot better.
We'll get to that, I'm sure, at some stage. But 600,000 people, 606 to be precise, 1,000 people in the job market thrown out there. And do you know how many jobs we create in that same period, in 1 year? 149,000 jobs, and not all of them are actually very good jobs deserving of a graduate or some of the people who are thrown out there. So we have a deficit of about 450,000 and then people thrown out there who do not get employment every year. Okay? Now people ask me, how are you going to get employment for the youth and so on? And there are all sorts of populist answers that you can give. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But the truth is, employment or unemployment is a factor of the economy, of a good economy. That's why in developed countries, they will tell you, somebody will say that we've created the lowest unemployment figures. Why? They are saying we've created a booming economy, and a booming economy sucks in jobs because it creates. Now, I'll give you an example. In Uganda, I've told you 606,000 people thrown out in the job market. I'm taking a sample of 1 year. Like that was 2018, and in that same year we had 149,000 jobs created. Now in Kenya,
so you've got about 500,000 people frustrated.
450,000 people frustrated. Now in Kenya, in a year, the same year, they churned out 800,000 jobs. So if we had,
it's a big economy.
That's my point. That's why they have those jobs. Now, if we built our economy to be as competitive and as robust as theirs, and we could produce those figures of jobs, then we could have a surplus of jobs, because we are 600,000 people are going in the market, we are producing 800,000 jobs. Thank you, people have their choice. People can choose between this and this. So jobs.
So you don't believe in all this that is being said, that our economy has been growing and one of the fastest growing in the world?
That is absolute rubbish. That's absolute horse manure. Let me tell you, fastest growing in the world. 20 years ago, about 20, maybe late 90s, we actually had a bigger GDP than Tanzania. Now, Tanzania has twice our GDP. We are 30-something billion, they are $66 billion. they have doubled us in that period. Okay? But now when people start, when these, apologists start talking about figures, they create very, very slight changes. I was in a webinar with one of them, and of course it was very controlled by the movement. So the man told me, in this year we had this number of this year we have this number, showing me improvements, okay? But he's showing me improvements that have existed over a very long period of time. Then, wait, hold on. Then he asks me a yes or no question. Yes or no. So give me this yes or no question. So, is Uganda improving? Yes or no? So I look at him and the very disingenuous question. So I ask him a question. My son was 4 feet tall at the age of 8. But he got to 19 when he's 4.5 feet tall. Is he growing taller? Yes or no?
He is.
Yes, that's my point. But at 19, if he's 4.5 feet, he's a midget. Whereas he's a midget. If he's 4 feet at 8, that's okay.
Yes.
But if he gets to 19 and he has only added half a foot.
So you're
then he's a
basically
midget.
saying stunted children are also growing children.
But my point is that we are midget. We are putting on very small figures. In 14 years, he has only added half a foot.
So are you saying, in effect, that if the economy is growing, the yardstick is how many of its educated lot is it able to absorb?
It will absorb so many people. And it's not just size of economy, but that's a big thing also. And of course the size of the private sector. And we have a very shrunken private sector. And all of it is almost all of it is tied to some kind of political, godfathers. So there is very little clear private sector of people who started businesses and actually went and made them thrive. And now we have a lot of startups as a country, people who are starting up their own businesses, and that has been put out there as good. But in truth, when a country develops and its economy develops, the number of startups reduce. That is a known fact, because most people after university choose to go into employment and pursue a career rather than starting. Now that's what happened with Asia. There was a time when the economy was not good. They have all sorts of startups. Everybody is thinking of starting up a business in ABC.
Because there's nothing else to do anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But now when the economy grows, then the startups reduce, and now people choose to go into career because they are actually big and small SMEs, even for some cases SMEs, but also big businesses which can take them in.
And maybe what you're talking about reminds me that during the last election, about 10% of Uganda's population was running in one of the political races. It's sort of as if, because there's not too many jobs, politics has become a career itself. I mean, it's a job, people go in there because they have nothing else to do.
That's true. That's very true, because there are so many people who have failed in every other places and are going into politics. That's the honest truth. And
a few are also going into ministry, I'm told.
Sorry?
I'm told a few are also going into ministry.
It's okay, but at this ministry, you have a choice of whether to patronize their ministry or not. But in politics, if the man becomes MP or president, you have no choice. He's going to be making laws for you or, presiding over you. You understand?
Yes.
So if I am somebody who has failed at something and I go into ministry, people can choose not to come. There is freedom.
But if you are LC5, then everybody's going to suffer.
Everybody in the district is going to suffer because of me. So that's where the issue is. Now, the reason people are going into
So you're against persons who don't have a record of success being involved in politics?
No, I actually didn't say that. I'm just saying that we have so many people who have been pushed away from politics because they have too much to lose. And then we have so many people who are in politics because they have nothing to lose. And that's a very bad thing. And I can't think of any country where that is true apart from Uganda. I'll give you an example. There's this law which was put, and this is so important, very close to my heart. There was a law which was put telling people to resign from civil service and from, all these positions of employment. Even some of these media houses, you couldn't stand for office and still work for NBS. They would ask you to resign. And then you have to resign and give up all you've had. For
Conflict
the sake
of interest.
Because of, no, that's not the actual reason. Because you're going into politics. The actual reason is not conflict of interest. The actual reason is because this leadership wanted a certain caliber of people in politics, not the thinking high caliber people. Now, as a result, I'll give you an example. If I wanted to stand, if I'd finished university, let's say, and gone straight into public service, At my age, I am 48, I would probably have traveled some distance. Maybe I'm assistant commissioner or commissioner or something like that.
Yes.
And then you're asking me to give up a permanent and pensionable job to go into the lottery of elective politics. So most people, and yet actually I could have a lot to offer in those areas because I've been there at the policy making level. I know everything that is happening. And as a politician, I would be the sharpest person to come and make decisions. But then you're telling me, if you want to come and make decisions here, then you're going to have to give up that place and everything you've worked for these 20 years and go for the lottery of electric politics. So guess what so many... Wait, just hold on.
So
guess what most of those people do?
So you wait.
They just stay away from politics. And guess what is the net effect of that law? We have people in politics whom would not want to be in other places, whom would not trust to run our companies. But
so
we are trusting them to run a country.
So
now, and
you
that's
can't
a bad
run you can't be good enough to be at a board of an organization. You can't be a CEO of anything. But you are a CEO of a district.
Yes, and you're a member of parliament, and you're making the laws for the country. Because the people who should
laws
be making...
for who?
Because, and that's the point, laws for those intelligent people who are being kept out of politics by a stupid law. Now, the first thing I'll do when I become president, now this is important, is remove that law. If Kasumba wants to stand for politics...
God forbid.
You say so. But if Kasumba wants to stand for politics, you don't have to give up anything. The most we can tell you is take 6 months unpaid leave. If you're elected, then you can resign. If you're not elected, you go back to your position in government, in a corporation, wherever. You go and resume from wherever it is you stopped. Now, just by changing that one law, you will see the caliber of people we shall have in our politics. They will all be high class. And that's what we want. We want, because a country can never achieve its dreams when it has its lowest caliber people in politics. That is not going to happen.
Let me ask this then. Do you think that persons whose major academic achievement is senior 6 or its equivalent, whatever that means, should we reduce ourselves to that as the requirement? Then the population determines. And we can even question the ability of the population to find the best leaders for itself. Do you think we also need to change that, going by where you want us to go, having the best in our society?
We don't change that.
Running for office.
I am not stopping anybody from standing for politics. I am just saying, bring the other intellectuals to also come and join. If the electorate decide to select the other person, so be it.
Then they suffer the sins.
Yes, up to them. But I'm saying these people have been locked away by a stupid law.
Okay.
Now, just bring
Fair
them,
enough.
give them the liberty to come. So if Kabuleta is an S6 dropout and is semi, whatever it is you want to call me, now, if I'm standing for member of parliament, don't ring fence that position for people like me. Bring intellectuals, somebody with a PhD to compete with me.
Knowing that if they lose, they can go back.
Knowing that they can go back and they have nothing to lose in the long run coming to stand with me. But if the electorate choose me ahead of the PhD holder, so be it. However, I don't want to keep the PhD holder away from contesting.
Fair enough. And let's get to climate change. Big deal, climate change. What's your plan of making sure that Uganda's development is sustainable and in tandem with this global movement of climate change? Do you actually believe in climate change?
That's an interesting question, because I'll tell you this. There's nobody who does not believe in climate change.
Okay.
But there are some people who don't believe in human-made and human-influenced climate change.
Okay.
Now,
explain the difference.
The difference is climate changes, and they have always changed. Okay. Climate has always changed. And actually, if you look over the past 400 years, and by the way, there are even so many top scientists who don't believe in human-made climate change. They say the change of climate is influenced by other things apart from human activity.
Okay.
So, and now, but even if I were to believe, I actually, I tend towards those who don't believe that it's influenced by human activity. But even if I was to believe in climate change, the issues that we have in Uganda are so urgent that climate change is an absolute luxury. It's like buying dog food for a household whose children are starving. Okay? And the last thing on our minds is feeding the dogs. So the truth is we have very urgent problems as a country. And Samson have moved around this country and seen the levels of poverty. And they can move you to tears. That's the honest truth.
I agree.
And people who have half a meal a day, and you wonder how this, and they just need something small, and they are not asking for too much.
So you're not the type that is going to arrest a man trying to get ahead.
Sorry?
You're not the kind of president who wants to send your environmental police to arrest a man whose only livelihood is charcoal under climate change.
How do you tell a man that if you don't stop doing this 50 years from now, the levels of carbon dioxide are going to have increased by what? Yet the man has nothing to eat today. Does he have the luxury of 50 years from now? Does he even have the luxury of next year? There are people even who don't have the luxury of tomorrow. So we have to be realistic in some of these things.
When you came, you see what I also don't understand, maybe let me agree with you a bit here. I mean, because we're all Ugandans, is you're telling him, stepping out of a Land Cruiser that is a V8, 4.6 engine, and you're the one emitting carbon.
Yes.
Interesting.
And that's the irony of it, because we had people, even in those climate change, influenced sort of thing, where people are coming out of private jets and nothing hits the environment quite like that.
But of course, the stats are also clear that we're not the biggest contributors to emissions.
No, we aren't.
Although we are suffering the worst.
We are suffering the worst. We are not by any stretch of the imagination. Are we the most industrialized? We aren't. We actually have our biggest climate issues are dust.
So do you think that...
not carbon dioxide and what?
So do you think that in that global perspective, it will go down to foreign policy and getting ambassadors to go to these Paris agreements and all to negotiate for us better, saying you emit the carbons, if you want us to contribute, then you are going to have to solve our poverty problems?
That's actually what they pledged to do. If you read the Paris climate change accord, when was it? It was just before, I think 2014 or 2015. Yes. If you read it, they actually pledged to give a lot of money to countries like ours to help us find alternatives.
Hopefully when it gets here, it works.
Of course, when it gets here, that's another story. But then we can actually do it. For instance, we can reduce the amount of, even just for our simple climate, issues. What we have an 18% electricity reach, 18%. That's very low. It has got to be higher.
It has risen over the years.
But we have the highest amount of, we pay the most amount for electricity in this region. Tanzania, who buy some of our electricity, charge actually almost half per kilowatt, half of what we charge people, half. Yet they actually buy from us. Kenya buy from us, their electricity is much cheaper than ours as well. Tanzania is drastically much cheaper than ours, and it shocks me how cheap electricity is in that place. But Kenya is just slightly lower, but it shouldn't be. Now, yet actually in Kenya, a lot of the industries were fleeing the country, saying the reason they are doing so is because of very high power tariffs. And yet their power tariffs are much less than ours. Now imagine what... We are talking of industrialization, creating jobs for youth, and what we can't do that with the power tariffs that we have.
Okay.
And because the dams that we are creating, and they said they will, when we finish with Karuma and Isimba, that the tariffs will go down. But they are not going to go down. I can guarantee you that, because even the prices of those dams, they have been grossly overpriced.
But how do you strike the balance? Because Europe got to where it is, probably by saying, let's develop. We shall look at climate issues later. Before they knew it, they had more industries than they could sustain their environment on. So how do you push industrializing us, getting the young people jobs, getting everybody living a better quality of life, while also thinking about nature? Because again, as persons of faith, we have to be responsible in how we use the environment.
I think the most important thing is to get people jobs, get industrialization if we can, because some of the things which we report we can actually make here, get industrialization, get cheaper power. That is what it is going to take. We cannot have genuine industrialization until we have cheaper power. Because Kenya lost a lot of industries just because of power prices. And yet theirs are cheaper than ours. So we have no hope in that area. So we have to reduce power prices. I don't know how it is going to be done because a lot of these deals are being entered, but somehow it has to be done if we are going to get jobs for you. Now, when the people have jobs, and when they are comfortable at a certain level, and when the farmers in the village are producing and have market for their goods, and they are beginning to have middle class problems like environment and so on, then we can talk about it. But right now, we are imposing middle class problems on people down there who actually have very basic problems.
So you will.
So
will you abide then to the Paris Agreement?
Well. That's it. I will.
Okay.
I will. Yeah. But it's not very. It's actually very soft on us. Okay. If you said it's actually harder on America, China, and so on. And
I sort of see you wanting to have a conversation with the French ambassador and the French president before you determine which direction you will go.
Even the countries like France, France tried to abide by their own agreement, which was signed in their own country, and guess what happened? The yellow vests, riots.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
There was a huge riot because they were trying to implement those climate change things. So, and that is France. Now imagine Uganda. So even France struggled to implement. China has not implemented one bit. They are not interested, but they are there. But they go by their own rules. America pulled out under Donald Trump. And I guess, I don't know who else is going to pull out. I think Hungary and even Brazil were considered. So it's a whole mess of a thing.
But you'd want to know, one of the things I found out when I was being taken around around France is that France is demonstration happy. And if you want demonstrations for any reason or whatever excuse, one of the places to go is France. So demonstrations in France happen for all sorts of reasons. Let's get to something here that the female audiences would like to hear you talk about and speak to. Gender-based violence. The numbers are going in all the wrong places. How can we deal with gender-based violence? It's passionate on my heart because I worked as a volunteer on GBV at the Interreligious Council. I got to know that if you're going to deal with this, you're going to have to need shelters because too many women are in these situations because ate nalagawa, abana bange. How do we deal with this?
I'll tell you this. I don't know how you expect a president to deal with gender-based violence. That's a very difficult question, you understand, for a president. I don't know if you're asking me as a pastor, because I can answer that.
I'm asking as a president because you are the head of the nation.
The head of the nation.
If there's gender-based violence in the country,
yes, but there are,
it is also an economic issue.
Yes, it is mostly an economic issue, and that's what because other women have asked me that before when I'm meeting my campaign agents who are women, and they tell me our husbands are beating us, and I don't know how to handle that. So I tell them it's because they are broke. When I give them money, they will be, they will be less violent.
It could be worse. From my experience, sometimes it's because she makes money that he doesn't.
Then you make him make money also. Because how do I handle that? Because I'm not a marriage counselor. You understand? But there are civil society groups which are actually very good at that.
Okay.
And we can encourage them to go and do their work. And they do a very good work. Because it's all about training, sensitizing women on their rights and so on. And it basically starts with educating and empowering women. Okay. Because empowered women are very difficult to abuse. That's the honest truth. So they have to be empowered. First of all, educated. We have to deal with why they are the biggest number of school dropouts are girls. It's a very, very big number, a very disproportionate number of school dropouts are girls. So you have to deal with that.
Then that also leads to the quality of children they have.
Exactly.
Then we are in a circle.
It's a whole systemic problem. But even if they have dropped out of school, how can they be empowered to be, financially stable and independent so that they are not in a home as dependents and therefore vulnerable. Okay. They are in a home as people who are there for a symbiotic relationship in which they both benefit with the man. So those are things which are deeper. These are society problems which have no political answers immediately.
Okay.
But politics can only, help, remove some of the extenuating circumstances that cause gender violence to increase, that I've talked about, include, the economics, include the education and so on. But aside from that, I don't know. So when the women asked me, I told them, when your husbands have money, they will not beat you.
Okay.
Then the women asked me, but then now if they have money, they will go for other women. Then how do I answer that? So I said, anyway, I don't know what to do. I'll just make sure they have more money. And the problems which come with more money, those are yours to solve.
Probably if you have more money, then you can also decide who is your husband.
If you also have more money, then maybe you can find another alternative. I don't know.
Interesting there on a light note. But there are 10 others in the race. Mr. Kabuleta, what makes you so strong in the belief that if somebody did not make you their president on the 14th, they are making a very huge mistake for themselves and other persons?
Oh, okay. Because I think I am the only candidate who has endeavored, as much as interviewers like yourself will let me, to stick away from all this and stick to the issues that this country faces, a majority of which are of an economic nature. Stick to the issues and say, because I spoke somewhere, I remember when I said that, financial liberation, and somebody told me that, you're saying financial liberation, but people have to first get political liberation before they get financial liberation. That was Dr. Besigye, which was fairly true. But then, also on the other hand, there are people who have gotten political liberation and they don't have financial liberation. Just go and ask South Africans. They were politically liberated, but they are still in the doldrums financially. That's why you'll always... make Ugandans poor because it's the easiest way for somebody to perpetuate themselves in power. They ask me why. Why would he do that? Because of course he believes that poor people are easier to govern. But then why? There's so many whys. And then what is the end game as far as it's concerned? What is the end game? So I'm thinking, they say now, all this wealth, he's going to die and leave it. So what is the end game? So somebody asks me that, and then I look and I say, let me tell you something. There is a reason why, even in democracies, I'll give an example like America. You have one family, the father is a vice president, and the president, then the son is a president, then another son is the governor, and is also standing for president, and actually might have become president if it wasn't for Trump, you understand? Okay. There's a reason why there are those dynasties.
Yes.
And do you know what the reason is?
And nobody has a problem.
Nobody has, because they are elected, But do you know do you know why those dynasties exist?
No.
Because of money. Because the time comes when a certain family has money and you will elect them. So I was telling this gentleman, the way Museveni thinks right now is he wants to make sure all the oil deals, all the gold deals and everything belongs to his family. And then a time comes when you elect them in a free and fair election because they're the ones who have the money. You understand? So that's the legacy of Kenyatta. He fought to make sure he establishes that. But Uhuru Kenyatta is elected. Why? Not because he has the money. And he did not fight anybody. And that was done by his...
And somebody may even argue they forced him to come to politics.
Yes. Now, but the whole empire was created by his father. Now, people come, even in a free and fair election, people vote for you because you're the one who is employing how many people? You're employing thousands of people and so on, and your name is etched all over into society. Now, that has been Museveni's game plan. He wants to create a scenario where when he goes, his family are the only ones with money, and therefore, even if democracy comes, they somehow find a way. He has studied all these things, and he knows why these things happen like this. That's why in Bunyoro, all the land which has oil all belongs to the same family. That's why all the places where there are minerals and what all belongs to the same family. He's trying to build that kind of hegemony. But unfortunately, it is not working for him. I don't know, because first of all, he's going to go before he can fulfill it. Secondly, I don't know. Maybe Ugandans are not ready for it, because, but the point is this. When we liberate ourselves financially, only then can we have true democracy. Somebody who does not have a meal, you cannot tell him your vote is important and don't exchange it for 5,000 shillings when he does not have supper. It is impossible. He is going to exchange the vote for the next meal. Now what happens in the next 5 years? He's at God's mercy.
So
now telling him how
saying?
important his vote is when he has no money is so difficult. So it is economic liberation is at the heart of everything. When Ugandans are liberated economically, and we can stand up and make decisions when we've gone through, that Maslow's hierarchy. And we are somewhere where we have the luxury of having grandiose political opinions. That's when we shall have proper debates in parliament. That's when we shall have proper representation. People shall be demanding the things which really matter.
Because they have what to lose.
Because they have sorted the basics.
So, in case the inevitable happens and you don't win, because as it is, it seems as if you are the only one going to win this. In case things don't go that way, for whatever reason, what's the plan?
And this man says he's not interested in politics.
What's the plan, and are you willing to work with whoever wins?
No.
Why not?
Anyway, the truth is I would work with whoever wins if they have the mindset.
Whoever wins?
If they have a mindset that is similar to mine.
Okay.
But the thing is...
Have you caught anyone with that mindset?
I have not seen it. That's the point. I've looked and I have not seen it. I honestly have not seen it. I have seen a lot of ambition. I have seen a lot of hatred for Museveni. Okay, in truth also, we share that, but it's not the basis of my campaign. Yes. You see, the thing is, this animosity, the rancor, the belligerence, we all have the capacity to have that. But I've chosen not to go that direction.
Okay.
But all I see is people going in that direction, pitching for sympathy votes, so they have to, then they this, then we stop. There is a certain way people are going, and I can see they are not thinking beyond election night. They are thinking up to election night. What happens after that? If he's announced as winner, he doesn't know, or she doesn't know because there's one lady. But then, when I start thinking, I am actually thinking about what I would do exactly when I am announced as winner. That's when my thinking actually starts. Because there are people down in those opposition parties whom I have identified will have big positions in my government. Because you can tell, not the leadership, not most decided leadership, but people who are there, and you listen to him speak, and you see something similar to you, and you say, now this is somebody whom you can task to go and make people rich in a certain locality. Okay. This is somebody whom you can give performance indicators and say, I want you to go and turn people's lives around here in these places. But they're in those places because that's where they think they will get, political mileage and so on, and clout. But in this government, I see so many people who are in those parties whom I can work with when I become president. So the whole point is about the mindset. I was in some place where somebody was telling me, they listened to me a lot, and telling them about all this financial liberation. And then somebody told me, promise us one thing, that even if you don't win, they said, we'll vote for you, but promise us one thing. Even if you don't win, please come and teach us how to liberate ourselves financially.
Talking about that, because I want us to leave economics to talk about education and our health sector, and finally corruption. Our debt burden. What are you planning to do with our debt burden? Or do you even believe we have a debt burden?
Oh dear, oh dear. How can we not believe we have a debt burden?
Because there are some who believe that if I want to, I don't have money, I don't have the option of stealing, and I want to build a house at my age, I've got to go to the bank, borrow a huge loan, build a house, then start paying for over the next 35 years or longer. My wife could argue that's such a huge debt burden on us, but she still accommodation. I'm not saying this is the current situation at mine, but I'm giving an example.
No, it's the current situation this country is in. And now we are, do you know we are actually taking loans to pay loans? Did you know that?
It seems as if every Ugandan lives that way.
No,
At least the Ugandans I know.
And the fish is rotting from the head. Because the government is taking a loan to pay the loan they took to build the Entebbe Expressway. It was in the newspapers recently, you saw it. So now when you get to a
The
point...
last time I checked, it was supposed to be toll.
It was what?
Supposed to be a toll road.
Which they haven't implemented for whatever reasons. I'm told there is actually no law that, stipulates for that. So the point is, and I've said this before, if your family was run with the same carelessness economically that this country is run, you would be in prison rotting there. I can tell you that for sure. Because I have not seen such careless expenditure, such reckless fiscal policy. I think Museveni tried to experiment on a scenario. Maybe he thinks if he goes and his family are in charge of all these things, the rest of us can go and hang.
You had promised you'd leave that name alone.
But the truth is, I mean, there's, okay. It's like telling a pastor, talk about Jesus, don't talk about the devil. somewhere, somehow, the devil has to work.
Okay. Carry on. Fair enough.
And the example is intended. Yes. So somewhere you have to speak about the devil, even if you want to talk about Jesus. So, the carelessness with which this country has been run, and the continued carelessness, and now to the point of where we cannot finance that road. First of all, it is very, very expensive. $7 million on average lost for every kilometer for that Entebbe Expressway. All that is, of course, eaten. And so many things which amaze me.
But there's also the argument, to be fair, that Ugandans who want these roads also want their land to be paid astronomically. And I'll tell you, I think it's a very selfish nature of human beings. If Kasumba knows that there's a road going my direction, and it might go through my land, I want all my problems to be solved by that road.
If it is,
that's also true. There's also that too.
There's that, but the problem is...
Is it because we no longer feel for our nation?
No, of course that there's that, but if the problem is, if it was Kasumba, it would be okay. But if a plan for a road is discussed at very high levels, and somebody knows there's going to be a road passing here,
okay, and
somebody from a certain family comes and buys the land from Kasumba at a very cheap rate, and then goes and charges an arm and a leg because they had they were privy to information, and they are the only ones getting the money. That's where the problem comes.
So should we have compulsory acquisition of land?
That's even what happened with the pipeline. All the land where the pipeline is passing has been bought by the same people, the same thieves. Okay? Now, if it was village people who happen to have a piece of land and they are passing a pipeline here, being compensated, I would have no problem with that.
Okay.
But it is the same thieves who know, because they are privy to certain information, to go and then buy that land and sometimes even force those people out of that land without paying them a coin.
So you don't want to borrow more? Dead burden we're talking.
We cannot not borrow as the way we are right now. Okay. But we have to have a more responsible fiscal policy.
Okay.
We have to be, we have to be more frugal in our expenditure. We spend too much money on regime prolongation. The cost of not having democracy is very high. Okay? When democracy comes, we shall reduce all this money. Because then we are paying 10.2 trillion shillings in wages. How is that even possible? That's a quarter of the entire budget.
And yet government is not the biggest employer.
Well, it is not the biggest employer, but then the private sector is very thin like this thin. So we have to expand the private sector.
Okay.
We have to shrink the public sector. We have to be a bit more responsible in our spending. But more importantly...
Close some districts?
That is going to be a very deep political issue, by the way. But we can have different...
Because there's also demand for them. Because now we've moved from districts. They've stopped demanding districts. They are demanding cities.
They are demanding cities. And we have cities all over the place which have not a single economic activity. But there is a city full of dust and everything, not a single economic
Because we can't
activity,
give
but it's
any
a
more
city.
districts, can
But,
we? We can't give any more districts, so we've started to give cities.
You never say never with these people. But we can get up
You
to
will
what-
be president.
No, if I'm president, of course. But now,
So do you go more districts or more cities, or you suspend?
we cannot have more districts. We have to have more realistic administrative units. Actually, I was having a think tank with some people
Okay.
and saying, how do we send this and have a more realistic administrative unit?
Okay.
And people were saying we have regions, okay? You know the way it used to be in Amin's regime, the governor of the central,
Okay.
whatever, province. He used to call them provinces,
Yes.
where there is a governor and is in charge of a region. So we get a region and put a governor, and we keep the district, because the districts people...
It's very clear you don't want to have all power, because if you're saying you're going to split Uganda into
Provinces.
regions
Oh,
or provinces or whatever, we can find a name for them. You have to give these people power.
I don't mind sharing the power. The important thing is that those people have to account for what they are doing. And even if you give somebody and you make him a governor of a province, it has to come with a budget. It has to come with responsibilities to make roads and all utilities and make sure all those things are working. And that's okay with us. The issue is, as long as they are appointed, the governors are appointed, and they have key performance indicators.
Appointed, elected.
Governors will be appointed,
Okay.
because they have to be administrative, and we have to make sure they are doing what they are supposed to do. So if your region is lagging behind compared to what its potential is, then you put aside. We put somebody there who is going to make people rich in that place.
So
now
that would require constitutional
that's where you don't go
amendments.
into the politically, muddy waters of reducing districts, because that's a very political issue.
Okay.
But you can still have administrative units that are more realistic than the 146 or 47 districts.
Let's get to education, and I'm very passionate about that. When you were in Buganda Road Primary School, I was in Nakasero Primary School, or about the same time. And at that time, at least in my class, the Alumadi boys, the sons of the Prime Minister, were in my class, a public primary school. Nakasero, Buganda Road, Shimon, which is gone, well, there's a version of it, were public primary schools. And the children of the well-to-do were in these schools because they were on top. At the time, as you remember, there were very few international schools here because the demand for them was either not there or unnecessary. Now, we have people in the Ministry of Education running private education. I've been to an international school, and you can literally think that there's a cabinet meeting there because all registration plates are going there. How do we revamp our education? I'm very keen on public education because at the moment it seems as if government has left education to the forces of demand and supply. And where we are today, a child is a client in a school, and that has its challenges.
No, they haven't left. I wish they had left them to the forces of demand and supply. They have not. They have actually gone out and completely bastardized the whole education system. Now, you remember not too long ago when there would be buses and buses and buses, and even some kids coming on planes from Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and even further places to come to Ugandan schools. You remember that?
I do.
Now, do you know that was a very big income earner for us? Kenya gets a lot of money from us. That was one of the areas we were getting money from them coming into this country. Now I'm actually seeing Ugandans crossing the border going to Kenya.
That's not true. And I'll give you
here's the thing.
I'll give you a scenario. My eldest daughter goes to a private school. And during COVID, the big worry was if we get our education back on without opening our borders, private schools won't work. Why? Because the clients who pay money up front don't come from here.
No, okay, there might be a bit of that. But then also, on the other hand, there are so many schools which were started counting on the international clientele, which has reduced to actually almost a trickle. It used to be very big, but it has totally reduced to a trickle. Why? because all sorts of issues. First of all, one of the reasons they came was because of Makerere University. Makerere University has had its own things with Museveni fighting the lecturers fighting Museveni pensions and so on, and the university being used as a cash cow rather than a place. Like, he has destroyed everything just now. We have to rebuild education from scratch. And we have
How do you do that?
We have, first of all, by rebuilding the traditional institutions that made us who we are. Now, when you went to schools, like at the schools like Nakasero, or like even when you go to the secondary schools, like, Chisubios, or, Namiriango, or Budo, and so on.
There were model schools across the country.
There were so
Laibi,
many. Exactly. In different regions. Yes. You didn't go there because you could afford. You went there because you were sharp enough.
Okay.
The school fees was actually very affordable.
There used to be district quarters, I'm
Yes,
told.
and the school fees was extremely affordable. What actually cut people off was their brains, not their money. Now, we have to build something like that. So that way, the schools had a culture. And those are the schools which produced us. They had cultures. You would tell this one went through this school, this one went through this school. And they produced everybody, including some of these leaders whom we have here. But then you see that the culture has been destroyed. Private schools, which of course were entered into by very high, people in high places, and then it's in their interests to stop, the glory of the public schools that they once had. So you see names going down and institutions going down, and then other institutions emerging because they are, their business and so on, and then the whole commercialization of education. And this is something which has hurt me so much, because my son was telling me in his school, I'll not mention it for purposes of, but they are in class sometimes from 4:30 a.m. up to 6:30 p.m. One class or the other. I'm taking him out of the school. Because if I, an adult, was put through that rigor, I would break down. But they are putting teenagers through that rigor. No sports, no time for sports.
If they have in a country that hasn't made a satellite, hasn't gone to the moon, we don't make, I don't know what. In the UK, where they have satellites and go to the moon, everybody goes to class from nursery up to senior 6 at 9. And at 3, they are done. What are we studying?
We turned, it's like we are training Marines. I don't believe what is going on in these schools. It is so terrible. Do you know we are having kids who are 14 and are addicted to all sorts of things? That causes addiction. There is no way you can put a child through that, and by teenage he's not addicted to something. I mean, if you're lucky, it will not be something dangerous. But they end up in all sorts of things because you're screwing their brains in a way. You, his father, if you go to work at 8, at 6 you are in a sauna with a kasuka somewhere, relaxing with chigere and so on. But your son went to school, to class at 4:30, morning preps. And it's 6:30, he's still in school. That is child, that is child abuse. Let me tell you, there is no way I'm going to be president.
It probably also might
you brought a good example.
Teachers' abuse.
I don't know if they're teachers, but you brought a good example. In the UK, from 9 to 3. And are we more educated? I mean, is our education system better?
We are studying books. Just a second. We are studying using the books coming from people
who study
less.
Than we
because whether it is at Kingston for physics or what chemistry it is.
Don't bite your tongue.
I didn't do very well in chemistry. You know why I can't even remember the book. So we have to go back to the basics when you become president.
We really have to. First of all, even as a way of promoting sport, we have schools which are licensed on a piece of land as big as this hall. They cannot even play table tennis. They don't have that space. Where do children have extracurricular activities?
Playing was demonized.
No, playing is supposed to be compulsory. That's how you create adults who are responsible, who are not addicted to coffee at 14, and God help if it is just coffee. there are other things which are worse than that. And I've seen things which are happening and the problems these people have. And now with all these tabs and what, you have kids who are addicted to pornography. And they are looking for places to relax because the schools are treating them like they're training Marines.
Then you're going to have to work with city planners and authorities, because if you're saying there are certain things, bare minimums that have to be in a school, you are going to have to close down some schools. My daughters go to a school where there is concrete, paving, and tarmac. I haven't seen grass, apart from the one that is in the place where the rabbits eat. Are these facilities going to be closed because there are no playgrounds?
No, we don't come with a high-handed approach like that of closing. But we encourage...
How about the new ones opening?
Yes, that's where we start. The new ones opening, you have to show us that you have space to have at least 2 or 3 spots for, if they are girls, both genders, so that the people have time to go and have it. 4:30, kids are in, do you know they go to sleep at 10:30 and they're up at 4:30? That's like marine training. So what happens in holidays?
Holiday work.
Okay.
I've never really understood.
Holiday work aside.
I asked my daughter once. It is
Somebody
December. You're moving from one class to the next. You have holiday work for the class you're coming from or the class you're going to. I don't know what.
By the way, good question. I never thought about that. So you finished one class.
Yes.
You're going to the other.
But you have holiday work for which class?
For which class? Thank you very much. Now you cannot. The child, 3 weeks of holiday, he's sleeping from morning up to evening. You go to work, he's sleeping. You come back, he's sleeping. Because he has been sleep deprived for 3 months. There is no way I am going to let that happen. If I'm president, we have to change our education system.
Health sector, and then finally sports.
Okay.
We will enjoy sport in your government, won't we?
You'll enjoy sport in my government.
Let's begin with the health sector before we
begin
finish
with the health
sport.
sector.
Yes.
We have people who are experts in the health sector who are going to give their view.
Okay.
Even sport, we have somebody who is absolutely experts in that field.
Okay.
And who are involved in, very high level.
And for those of you watching online, I see Ismail Dakabachigongo in the house as well. The last time I checked, he was running his own race. We'll ask him about that.
No, he's actually running very high.
Okay.
In Bugweri. But he's here to tell us about sports. He's a former journalist. And
we'll give him his time. So you want to close with the health sector? Now,
health sector, oh my. It's just absolutely messy, to be honest with you. And it doesn't have to be. Let me tell you, it's the most funded sector in this country by our development partners, if you'd call them that.
What happened to Abuja Declaration?
Abuja Declaration 2001, we have to spend 15% of our GDP on health. We are nowhere near close. You tell us, the expert in that area, okay. We are nowhere near close spending 15% on our GDP. That's why we have very low health indicators in so many of these other things. But here's the thing. There is no way you can have a proper education system and a proper health system until you work on the issue of corruption. Because the amount of corruption that we have and all the indices that we have, the health sector, first of all, we have to work on the infrastructure, which is very bad, and across the regions, have good regional referral hospitals. And now, I was in Tororo and I went to the hospital and I saw what the hospital looked like. They don't even have an X-ray machine. And for some reason, as soon as I left Tororo, and I looked at the hospital and it's in a very sad state. I don't know if it can, handle anything close to the most basic,
regional referral hospital.
Yeah. Now, then, the next day I left Tororo and guess who was there next after me? Opening a very powerful market. And I said, we have our priorities wrong. How can you have a decrepit hospital?
Financial liberation.
And
market.
A terrible hospital. And you have a market where people are selling what? Tomatoes.
He's putting income in people's pockets.
Well, they have to first be alive before they get that income. But the point is, they don't have to. They don't need a grand building to sell tomatoes. You understand? And actually what I saw in one day, and it amused me, is I was moving, those special and then I'm seeing the market has just been built and it looks magnificent. And it's all lit up and what, but people are selling all their merchandise at the, outside the market, on the roadside, on the pavements. So I'm wondering, and I'm saying, hey, what do people have against nice things? So I asked the gentleman, who was I asked him, but why don't people go and sell their things in the in the market? Then he gave me a very interesting answer. He told me, and I will say it in Luganda, that omanya abantu baffe bakyetaaga okuyiga nti omuntu alinnya amadala n'agenda okugula ennyaanya. So
that's deep. That's very deep.
Because, 3 stairs to go and buy Irish potatoes and nyanya. And actually that answer, it was sarcastic, as you can.
It definitely was.
But it told a lot, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because the market was there. The stalls are empty, everything is there, and the money is here, and all the people are selling the merchandise down here. And that's actually what's happening in those markets.
So basically,
but then the hospitals.
Basically what he was saying
the wrong
is
priority.
that if you want people to stop defecating in a place, do not put the toilets on the 5th floor.
I don't know, now you've taken it to another level. I was talking about nyanya. I think that's a bit more pleasant for this conversation. Okay. Anyhow, but you see what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So we have to invest the Abuja Declaration, a good place to start. 15% of our GDP.
Okay.
Now, our GDP is currently maybe $31, $33 billion. 15% would actually give us a very good starting place for our health sector if we were to follow that declaration. But even if we were not to, let's say we have issues, we have a lot of support in the health sector from development partners. We get in excess of $400 million every year from America alone for health sector. We get a lot of aid in drugs and so many other things, which we can put to use if you take away all the corruption. But the bigger the purse, the bigger the hands, the thieves. That's why the biggest corruption scandals have been in the health sector, Gavi, Global Fund, and so on and so forth. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars just siphoned away and so on.
Before I open the floor, and Ismail, I'd like you to ask the matters on questions, matters on sport, because that's your area. Corruption is a national problem. And it has also got to do with who we are, selfish individuals, born of sin and raised in sin. How do we deal with corruption? Because I remember there was a time in which the president said that to be hired in URA, you needed a letter from your pastor. At the time I was working on Nasser Road, and I saw my colleagues do those letters on Nasser Road. I'll be honest with that. I'm not
Which
so sure.
pastor were they?
Sorry?
Which pastor were they?
I would not go to that direction. I'm not so sure whether I was also involved or not. I can't remember properly. In manufacturing of the letters. So there's a national problem of corruption. How do we deal with it?
By dealing with it from the top. Because I say there are 3 levels of corruption.
Okay.
And these are the ones that, you have to decide how to handle these. The first level is the basic level where, you pay some money to get some service here and there
petty
to
corruption.
somebody. Yeah, petty corruption. The second one is a bit higher where, roads are not done because the tendering process involves oiling the mustache of so many people along the way. So by the time the money gets down to the actual road, you can only have 1 layer instead of 3 layers. Okay. And that was the famous
That's
job.
between petty and syndicated.
Now, that's a higher one. The one of, which affects service delivery, which affects hospitals and, all that. And so many other things which are affected by that level of corruption. That one has to be handled. But now you cannot handle any of these 2 until you handle the one at the top, which is what I call the plunder of national resources, where one man and his family think they own the oil, the gold, the minerals, the marble, the mercury, and everything of this country. Now, as a pastor, I believe, it's spoken in the Bible, strike the shepherd, and the sheep will what?
Scatter.
The sheep will scatter. Now, when we start by striking the man at the top, all these other corrupt people will do what? Will scatter. You cannot start from down. You have to start from up. We have to start by creating a Uganda where people know they are partakers of national resources and not just observers in the plunder of those resources. We have come to a state where actually even the president calls it my oil, and no journalist will stand up and challenge him. I mean, imagine what is going through his mind. Because it's one thing.
I wish you were still in journalism. You would have done that for the profession.
I can do it better here. Imagine there are things which you can do but you will not say.
Yes.
But now when you start saying them overtly, okay, and you put it in people's faces, my oil, then that shows you've reached a level of impunity that is, unprecedented. Because now, so they will, anything of the national resources, whatever it is, they will come, they will send soldiers to come and take people away, throw them out. I've seen this in Busoga, I've seen it in Teso, I've seen it in Lango, I've seen it in Gulu. There are places there which have a lot of gold. Some pastor was telling me that, trying to demonstrate to me how much gold there is in some place between Kitugum and the border. He told me there is a lot of gold there. There is a pastor who went to preach and they gave him an offering of 4 kilograms of gold. So, and now these are resources that, and of course that was a pastor telling me that, so yeah. I'm sure he wanted to go and preach there. So that's not a bad place to preach, is it?
Never.
Well, the theologian in Kasumba would do with that. We could use 4 kilos. But my point is, a lot of resources that if they are not taken out, they are completely personalized, because these are things which, undiscovered and so on. And there is a lot that we have here in this country which is unexplored in the tourism sector. Totally unexplored, completely underperforming. We have almost the same.
We could also raise questions about its funding.
No, funding is one thing, but that's a small, because of course it's not marketing. It's about marketing the country, which is why I was telling you one of the things we'll task the ambassadors with doing is bring us a certain number of tourists for you to justify your embassy existing in that country, among other things. So we have almost the same number of tourist arrivals as Rwanda. That's a shame. What does Rwanda have? They have those, mountain gorillas. And do you know what percent of mountain gorillas they have?
No.
13%. Do you know how many we have? 53%. But they make more money from those gorillas than we do. The rest are in Congo. They make more money from those gorillas than we do. And they have 1.7 tourist arrivals according to their board. We had, I think by 2018, 1.8 million tourist arrivals. We're almost at par. That's a shame. We have so many things going for us. We have mountains. We have all sorts. We have 22 game reserves and national parks. We have so many things we can explore.
I'll speak to a name you probably are very familiar with. Andrew Seguya. Dr. Andrew Seguya. He was you were here not too long ago. He said it should be easier to sell Uganda because we have things Kenya doesn't have.
Yes.
Tanzania doesn't have.
Yes.
They're making more money than we make.
They make more money. I'll tell you this. Tanzania makes $300 million from just Kilimanjaro. $300 million. And that's for the government. That's not for, that's from the fees.
People in Moshi.
The $700 people pay. No, that's the fees. The $700 people pay to climb the mountain. 300
with
million.
Their own energy.
With their own energy.
So it is his legs, now, then he pays
and those
700.
people have to pay the tour guides to take them. They have to pay the hotels where they stay, the food and so on. But just the money Tanzania gets is 300 million from Kilimanjaro. They put an airport there, an international airport. That helped in that. That was comfortably financed by that, whatever. Now, Rwenzori Mountain is better for mountain climbers. Is unique.
Yes.
Is much better than Kilimanjaro. But we make less than $5 million from Rwenzori. With a little marketing, we can make that amount of money and more. Because you are not going to get a mountain like Rwenzori. First of all, for mountain climbers, Rwenzori is better because it is sharper.
Yeah.
Kilimanjaro is a bit more slanty. So if you want the challenge...
I've been told by a climber it is a better challenge.
It's a better challenge. And... I mean, on the equator with snow up there for half of the year, and so many things that are unique to Rwenzori, which we can make a lot of money from. Now, and would have to, and that's just one thing, because look at the marine tourism from the whole Nile thing. There was a report saying Africa loses $60 billion every year from marine tourism. We can get a big chunk of that money.
Rapid.
Because of, of course, some of which have been taken away by the
With the
polls.
biggest collection of butterflies in the world,
We have 11%.
We have birds nobody has.
11% of the world's bird species are here. And
In Uganda alone.
In Uganda alone. And guess what our government is doing? It's cutting down the forests which house those birds to plant sugarcane. That's the sort of people we have.
From what I heard, they said that the sugarcane is not being planted in the forest.
No, the sugarcane.
Ladies and gentlemen, give His Excellency Joseph Kabuleta a very big hand clap. I'd like to get Ismail on the microphone. Ismail, you'll ask the questions on the sports sector.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm very glad to be here. I noticed I'm the only one wearing a mask. And I was telling...
No, there are others actually.
I was telling Mr. Kabuleta earlier that I've been under the weather bit this week. First of all, I'm very glad to be here. Growing up as a teenager, I read, listened, and watched Joseph articulate sport, and I actually always tell him I think he's the best sports journalist that we produce in this country, probably in a generation. I won't be good enough to speak at funerals. That's why I prefer to tell people what I like about them when they are still alive, because funerals are not the place. Samson, I've told you that before, many times. Now, Joseph, in an industry that I've dedicated a lot of my adult life, I think, since my days at university, I've had a chance to look at and see what the challenge of sport is. And I listed these areas, the challenges in 4 sectors of sport. 1, the facilities are very, very poor and non-existent in most of the areas. Secondly, the funding. The funding is extremely low. We are talking about 17 billion shillings a year for an industry that generates about $11 billion a year across the world. Thirdly, I see a lack of harmony within the sports administration circles. Administrators, I think, most of them, if I went to my shop and sold a few bags of cement, then I feel like I must run netball. They have no idea about what they are doing. Then finally, which I've noticed over time, is I think society. How do we transform this society beyond thinking that the hours spent in the library or spent selling food in the market could even be less profitable than someone who plays sport and excels at it? We have a society that is locked in a mindset that sport is perhaps not the way to go because of a burden, because of an injury, because there is no success. Actually, my mother, who is almost 70 now, always says, abazungu batukola bubi nnyo bagenda byonna tebabitulaze. Because when she watches television, all she sees is sport being sold by Europe. Now, the colonialists who are here did not leave sport in a state that was supposed to succeed and do that well. So the society that she grew up in, they were told to be very good clerical officers that follow rules and this and that. And sports involves a bit of innovation. If you want to be Maradona, you're not going to play football like Phil Jones. You have to think with the ball and try to be an artist. Now, I think there is that society. Now, with these 4 sectors that I've listed, I don't know which one comes first for you, Joseph. Is it the facilities? Is it the funding? Is it the people?
Actually, they come all together. Because the facilities, your mother is wrong. Because when the colonialists left us, sports was largely recreational. That's why even the people who played sport in that time were not wealthy people the way they are now. But they turned it over the years from recreation to an industry, which employs so many people and does a lot of things. And actually now it's a real industry where they are marketing, promoting, and so on. So it was up to us to take it away from the recreational sport that it was to what it currently is in other countries. I'll give you an example. I met an Ethiopian, and I just chanced on him. He heard about me and called me for some meal somewhere. And he had a very, those Ethiopian dishes. You can't eat it. It tastes like it's fermented. But, yeah, that's it. So I took coffee. But he told me something interesting. He told me that, do you know that he was involved in the creation of some of the best athletes in Ethiopia? He said we invested money in the institutions that created these people. And the people who come to that institution, you come with nothing but talent. You find everything there. You find a board, you find food, you find everything. But when you go and become a success, a portion of your money, which you earn out there, has to come back to these people who invested in you. So they are picking you up not because they love you, but because they are investing money. Now they win medals because somebody invested money, because it takes something to take somebody from down there to the medal champion that he is. Now he told me he came to Uganda. He ran away from Ethiopia because of political reasons. I think they had some issues with politics. So he came here and he told me he came and studied our laws here. And he said that we don't even have a law to support what we are doing in Ethiopia. He said, if you invested in a footballer or an athlete or something, you don't have a law that guarantees your investment. If he gets there and earns all these billions and decides not to give you, there is nothing you can do. It is all dependent on his goodwill or on his honesty. And you know nobody is going to invest in honesty. Okay? So he says, first and foremost, there has to be a law which governs sport as an industry. And until recently, we were running on a law which was the 1964 Sports Act, NCS Act. The only, isn't that it? You work in national?
Yes, I was previously working with National Council.
Yes. You also made to resign to go and stand for politics.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yes,
now you see, these are the people, somebody who would add value, but he has to resign. So, in my government, you won't have to resign. So, to go and stand for parliament. Because we need you there. You understand? So if you win, you resign and go there. If you don't win, you go back and try your talents elsewhere. Anyhow, so he told me we don't even have a law to back sport as an industry. Okay? Now, so many laws are put in place to turn sport from the recreation of somebody out there and, down there. So we have to start first of all with the facilities, because that's where people express themselves. In every neighborhood, in every district, every community, at least a football pitch, because that's what people mostly want, and then maybe an athletic.
So does government buy that land?
Who? Government buys that land.
Okay.
Because we have district sports officers. Now, that's what they are supposed to be ensuring, that there is an active competition and things like that. Now, with 146 districts, we have a good enough catchment area. Because when Maradona died, I remember I wrote and asked, if Maradona had been born in Uganda, would we have discovered his talent and made it what it was? Would he have become world famous, born in Katwe, as he was in Argentina? Because he was born in a slum. Okay? But somehow, because of the systems they have, they pick him out of there and turn him into the icon that he became. So the first thing has got to be sports facilities, because that's where we do the scouting from. Okay? Now, when we get the scouting and and we can manage to pick people out of there, then I don't know what is first, because we have to start with laws. Then after that, we can even do it recreational way, because what a travesty it would be if somebody as talented as Messi is born in Uganda and now he's drinking somewhere, just conversing how he used to dodge people, and they sit down and they stand up and they sit down, and that's it. He has not made any money from his sport. Uganda has not won any competition because of his talent. Nothing. And yet, I can assure you there are people as talented who are born here. No, so the scouting is important, which makes the facilities important. We have to have the proper legal representation. Then the funding of the sports facility, the sports organizations, and then the exemption from tax, because sports equipment are coming here and being taxed, and that is just not right, because they are coming to actually help people. And then there is nothing like sport which lifts the morale of people. Okay, as we are right now. Imagine if we're at a World Cup and Uganda is playing Germany. That's the only place we are going to be on level ground with a country like Germany. Now imagine if we beat them. Imagine how much pride we would have as a nation just from, beating Germany at a World Cup. Now we lose a lot by not taking sport seriously. Okay? We lose so much. And then we lose our youth. A lot of them who feel they have talent. Of course, some of them don't, but they feel they do. But let them have a place, let them have enough place to express their talent, so that they discover for themselves that they actually have no talent. Then they can go to the market and do something. But as it is, there is no place. The facilities are terrible. The national team right now is playing in a personal stadium. which belongs to St. Mary's Chitende, a national team. Now that's very sad, okay? After all the grants we've gotten from China building a stadium. Yes, Dakaba, you're still asking.
I'd like to, do you think that it's difficult to do that now that we are winning medals every so often without even doing that? Do you think that to do that, it will take convincing? Because some may argue, we don't need to do that. Kipro teach and all other teachers that are doing the job and Krimos. How would you convince people who see medals coming in left, right, and center that what you're suggesting is the best way?
No, I mean, it's like saying if I pick gold, a piece of gold off the ground, do I need you to convince you to dig further? Of course, you know that if I pick this off the ground, there must be a lot more down. So you're going to want to dig. So the fact that we are actually picking the the teachers, as you called them, Cheptegei and so on, without even digging, shows that if we actually dug, we could land on a treasure trove of, talent. And now that's what we have to do. And by the way, let's not forget, those people cross over to Kenya and go and train from there. And that's not good. It's not good because they cross over to that place, they go and train from there, they are using facilities which are there. We do not have facilities for very basic Olympic sports. Even now break dance has become an Olympic sport in the 2024 Olympics. So there are some, I was a good break dancer. So there went my medal, chances for Uganda. And I'm joking. But the thing is, imagine what we could get. That's a joke. I was never a good break dancer. Imagine what we could get if we are having those people, somebody breaking the 5,000 meter world record, the 10,000 meters world record, and we have people like that without scratching. What would happen if we actually scratched and went a bit further? Now that's just athletics, because those people are naturally talented. If you've been to Captura, they are very high altitude and so on. But what about in football? We have to explore those. What about in tennis? What about in other field events? And so on. What are we missing out in those things? How can the government help people? Because of course, in truth, there has been total neglect by this government. 35 years of complete neglect of sport. Everything that has come in these years has been in spite of, rather than because of the government. Okay. So we can change that.
Okay.
I want to raise just two final things, and one of them goes to funding. Joseph, you would know that the turnaround of British sport came under the former Prime Minister, John Major. He's the one who started the National Lottery and got some of the returns of this lottery to go into supporting sport in the UK. Is that something you would consider? Because it's been proven to work. I've seen, for example, in Rwanda, the president decreed that companies that are investing in Rwanda, let's say Rwanda Energy Group or Rwanda Revenue Authority, they get a tax cut for money they invest in sport or arts or culture. You invest some money, let's say you put 5%, let's say 2% of a telecom company's returns, and that will be deducted from your tax coincidence at the end of the year. That's one area I would love you to talk about. The other one has got to be still on the facilities. Government is talking about building Teriet, the Health Training Center, which has been ongoing for some time. A stadium in Lira, renamed after John Akibwa, the 1972 Olympic gold medalist. Another in Buhinga, another in Kabale, then there is talk of Kacheka. How feasible are these projects? Because they are very good to listen to. Government has done feasibility studies for them. They've negotiated with Chinese and Japanese government to fund them. But how feasible are they? Won't they be white elephants in the end? You put up a facility, for example, in Kabale, and there's nothing happening. You've seen in places, I was in Gabon for the Nations Cup, and there's a stadium in a city called Oyem, not too far away from the border in Equatorial Guinea. Today, that place is a garden. The Nations Cup is gone, there is nothing. You've seen a stadium in Manaus in Brazil. When the World Cup is gone, there is nothing. How do you make these facilities? Because building them is one, keeping them sustainable is a totally different debate.
Now, we are not talking about building world-class facilities for like which are going to host the Nations Cup in Kabale. No. That's not what we are talking about. We are talking about having good playing surfaces and for different sports in different communities, which are well maintained. We don't need even any aid to go and plant grass. This is basic thing. To go and flatten a place, plant grass, and fence it off, and a place where people can express their talent. Now for stadia, let me tell you, have you been to Mali? Like,
No,
have you been
but I've been to Senegal.
You've been to Senegal?
Yes.
That's a country which has hosted the Nations Cup how many times?
90, I think twice.
Now, what does Senegal have that is so special that we do not have? Gabon or all those countries. Cameroon, I've been there.
They are taller.
Eh?
They are taller than us.
Oh, okay. I'm not talking about the players. I'm talking about their ability to host a tournament. Okay? Mali, outside of even the capital, looks like I don't know how. You can't like those, and yet they are hosting Nations Cup tournaments. The truth is, we can do better than what we are doing right now. Even the first time when East Africa thought of hosting a Nations Cup, we were thinking of a joint bid between Uganda and Kenya. Kenya is much better than all those countries combined. Why do they need a joint bid with Uganda? Just do the thing and host the tournament. Like, what's so special about the Nations Cup? We are not talking World Cup or Olympics. Those are high tech and everything. But there is a certain, detachment from real sport in East Africa that I do not understand, that is not in West Africa. That's why they have so many professional players. You say those are white elephants and what? But look at the people who are churned out from those places and who are playing in the top leagues in Europe. Why don't we have those people there? It has to start with those surfaces where people express themselves and then supporting, the league. And there is no football or sport that develops without government support. It's not possible. It is not possible. Even in developed countries where they have, even in England where they have the Premier League and what, the government still supports sport. So you have to support sport. You cannot say that sport is going to be self-sustaining. It is not meant for that purpose. It is meant for the feel-good factor that comes out of it. It is meant for other things, not to sustain itself. So the government has to give a lot of funding to sport because it has its dividends. Even all those people. Now imagine if we had all these people playing in, all those top leagues. Why aren't they coming from East Africa? Okay, Kenya has had a handful, but why isn't there a constant conveyor belt of talent the way it is in West Africa? Because of those surfaces, because of those things. You might say height, but not all of them at all. Okay, I've been to Senegal. I mean, somebody like Kasumba is a midget in Senegal. All of them are like, that tall and built. I've not seen it, But my issue is, we can in a few years host the Nations Cup, no problem. We have stadia. You remember when we used to host, maybe you were a bit young. I remember in 1990, I think 1 or 2, when...
We used to host the Challenge Cup every so often.
And the Challenge Cup had so many teams. It's not the same, admittedly, but it was a big tournament. A big tournament in 1992.
Mbale, Kakindu Stadium and all this. The
stadium in Bugembe.
Bugembe, yes.
The stadium in Mbale, where I watched some of the matches because I was in school in that place. Of course, there was Nachivubo, there was no Nambole at the time. But we were hosting games here. But now suddenly we believe, as if, these things are away from us. We can do this with a proper government which supports sport. And we shall do it in my government. And we shall make sure that every talent that arises, that God has invested in Uganda, is picked up, no matter how rural it is born, no matter how slummy or anything, wherever it is you are born in this country. If you're talented, special, you shall be picked up in this government. And we shall set up a system, maybe even with the help of people like yourself, we shall set up a system where every talent will be picked up. And as you said, the Rwanda thing, because do you know why in the 80s and early 90s, before these Bushmen came and spoiled everything, do you know that all those, Coffee Marketing Board had a football team, UCB had a football team? You remember those teams?
Airlines.
Uganda Airlines. Do you know why they had those teams? Because they were getting tax incentives for having football teams. You just put that tax incentive and you see how many teams will have sponsors in this country and how we can improve our football and our league. Just small tax incentives, attached to sport and scouting and so on. Are you exhausted?
Yes, madam, and your name?
My name is Remy Malé. I run a foundation in women and youth empowerment. So I'll tackle the area of women and youth. I'm so excited and I wish I could give you my vote already. Like, the discussion has excited me. I'm not political at all, but I am a community leader because leadership starts from each individual, each one of us. So one of the questions that you guys said is, what are we going to do about gender-based violence? And everyone is like, but how? Because I can't come into your house. But as a community, if we worked together, I have seen that affirmative action, if it is put in place well, it really does something good. It's just that in this generation, I won't say government because I told you I'm not political, but in this generation we are in today, affirmative action has been abused. You find they put a woman into parliament to represent a region on the women's ticket when she has no clue about what that region needs or how to be a leader. Zero leadership skills, but the person is put in on the women's ticket, maybe because she's yellow and from a certain tribe or from a certain region. Let's not even go into that. Then when we also go into schools and institutions where we have used affirmative action to help the girl child benefit, we have abused it again. Mr. Kabuleta, that is one area I would like you to let us know how you can do a systematic overhaul to see that a policy as affirmative action that really helps the girl child to get into the education system or into politics or into opportunities, or even the disabled children to get into opportunities can be lesser, because you can find someone taking the disabled ticket and yet they have no disability on their body. So how do we get such policies that are out to help us curb problems like gender imbalances and issues? Then I have also heard us talk about the youth and our education system. What are we studying? We've not gone to the moon. And if we look at our education system, most of us studied through cramming. To cram about the prairies of Canada, you've never even seen them, it will take some time, because personally the first time they made me imagine snow, I had never experienced a physical winter. The first time I experienced a physical winter, I went with my heels, you know I love heels, those who know me, and maybe a little jacket. The imagination I had about winter was Kawale. So I went with my little jacket. I think I was going to, my first winter was in Paris. It was Paris. So I went with that mindset. But do you understand? I had no clue. If I even tell you the tales in my head of what I thought from what I studied and what I saw with the physical experience. Our education system is all about cram work. Our education system does not create a generation of critical thinking youth. I love the fact that we have two sportsmen. One way to create a generation of critical thinking youth is sports and all those recreational activities. So how do we revamp and how do we plan to revamp our entire curriculum and education system and society at large with mindset on because they'll say oyomuyaye. You understand what I'm saying? Abobayaye, because you went into talent. Anyone who goes into talent, they even frown on you. But that is a system, that is our education system, and that is how our mindset as a society has been put. Okay. So how are you going to look into those two areas?
Thank you very much. Do you have a question, sir?
What happens is they don't necessarily have to ask questions. They can also give, because they're experts.
Okay.
So they can give expert opinion on different areas, perhaps which we have tackled. But so it's not just question, it's, you know, your input, your expert input, sir.
Well, my name is Mukisa Joshua William, and I'm a Youth for Policy Fellow with the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. I've been impressed by your presentation, and I should say this is not an event for cheap palaver. My question, you have hinted in a few bits here and there regarding the participation of East African countries towards their economic independence. So, I would like to ask, how intent are you on pursuing regional economic integration? What improvements do you intend to make towards the East African Common Protocol in that regard?
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I first answer Remi's. Now, the thing is, do you know why the children are the ones who fall out of school most? I try to find out. Some of the reasons, of course, are they are the traditional cultural things. Stay home, your mother needs you, ABC. Let the boys go to school. One of the others, actually, the main ones, is because of menstruation. And when they get in that period and they do not have what it takes, they stay home. They are, in shame and so on. Some of them have very long menstruations, 1 week out of a month, so they can't go to school in 1 week. So if that happens during exam, then they are cooked, so they can't proceed. So many of them fall out just because of the absence of proper sanitary, facilities for that period. Now, we can actually solve that because they are reusable sanitary pads. And we can provide those free of charge. Actually, just flood them, okay? So that let girls be free to stay in school if they want to stay in school. Because it's a big problem. Actually, it's one of the main reasons girls don't proceed in school.
Actually, internationally, they call it period poverty. We have it in Uganda, we have it in India, we have it in where because of impoverishment, you can't even study. It's called period poverty.
Yeah, and that's very sad because you lose so many people who had brains but cannot go ahead just because of something so small like that, which can actually be provided. Now, when they promise to provide, then they don't provide, then you know what happens, in other instances. So, but we can do that, and we will do that, okay? That solves part of the problem. Now, then in the long run, it also solves the problem of, domestic violence and all the other issues that come because women are desperate and they do not have a sense of independence and they don't feel that they are bringing something into the marriage, so they are trampled on and so on. Now, when somebody is empowered and can do all these things and, like yourself and has gone to Paris and nobody is going to what? To trample on you. So we have to bring everybody to that place. But then you raised something important earlier about how there are people in women.
Affirmative action, yes.
Yes, who are not actually dealing. They are supposed to be there dealing with women issues. But they end up just using that as a route to parliament rather than as something for which they are supposed to be, So you went as a woman MP, so you are supposed to actually be handling issues of women. And so it becomes very difficult if you go there and now you just saw it as a route to parliament. So maybe that's something that can be decided. But they are also elected by adult suffrage. So what do you expect? If you deal only with women's problems, the men will not elect you. So maybe women's MPs should be elected by women, so that then we shall say that you deal with women issues, then hope the women, vote for you. Because if it's adult suffrage, and you spend all your 5 years working on women issues, you might not have enough votes to take you to parliament next time.
My problem, which I would like when you're doing your government, is these people, it's not even adult suffrage that is only taking us in. You'll see that the person who really needs to get in there, or the poor girl that needs to come from Koboko and enter Makerere on that ticket, the rural girl, fails to get into the ticket, but a Shamahushe from a certain region.
Okay, let's not go there. Okay, now the thing is, first of all, the number of, affirmative action has to spread out into, the number of free university slots is very small, and it has been shrinking every year. And then the universities are now turned into cash cows because the money goes into the consolidated fund and so on for public universities. That's very sad because actually it should be the other way around. The money should be coming from this side, going to the universities to help students and give as much as possible free education to students, especially people coming from places, who are disadvantaged in public universities. Of course, there are private universities and people with money like Kasumba can take their children there. But I'm talking about public universities where we need people to come and get free education. And we are talking about a single mother who has looked after her child up to S6, and that's as far as she can go. Remember, at that time, she still has other children who, she's trying to push at least up to that level. So that the government can say, okay, thank you very much, you've come this far, let's take it up from this place. But then also there are those same people, the elderly people, when you go to the villages, they are saying now children go to school, we struggle to take them to university, then after university they come back home. and they are just like any villager who has not gone to university. All they have are stories. And it is very sad.
If you finish that one, he asked the question on
Yes,
regional integration.
Yes, now let me answer that one. The regional integration, it started with a lot of, the East African community thing, it started with a lot of vigor and a lot of goodwill. But somehow I see the goodwill as kind of, it seems to be eroding. Because the East African community could not force Rwanda to open its border with Uganda. And we have a scenario where for almost 8 months now, we have a border, a major border which is closed. And we cannot even get to the level of diplomacy to even sort that small problem. But then also, there was Ugandan traders recently, I was reading in the news, reporting Kenya for stopping Ugandan sugar going there, and Ugandan, I think, gas, petroleum gas, and they were saying that, especially sugar, they were saying that Uganda is getting it from abroad and just packaging it from here and selling it to Kenya, which of course was not true. But they were trying to find a way of putting a quota on Ugandan goods there. And it all started in 2017, when for the first time Uganda had a positive balance of trade with Kenya. Because they were used to, they be the ones sending, things here, we buy. And they don't buy a lot from us. But when now, that year, the balance turned a bit, then suddenly Kenya became a bit, cautious. And now they are playing data games. There's a lot of data games going on with the trade. And yet their goods will cross over into Uganda, no problem. But when Uganda wants to send its goods to Kenya, and even to Tanzania, there is a bit of problem. Of course, Rwanda, that's a different issue. But there is a bit of a problem, and you can see that a lot of the goodwill for East African community seems to be eroding, perhaps because of the personalities involved. But then also there was Magufuli, who came and he has his nationalism thing. I don't think he's particularly enchanted by the whole idea of East African community. I think he sees his world as Tanzania. He's there to do the best for his country, and he doesn't think that's in his best interest to open up his economy and everything to Kenya, which of course is a bit higher than him, and who would come and take advantage of all the things. So I don't know what you think the possibilities are really for us right now, because it's now been reduced to basically paper.
As president, how do you deal with that?
Now that's the problem, because it is not entirely myself, okay? As president, I have to deal with Magufuli. If he still thinks the way he does, then there's little I can do. As president, I have to deal with Uhuru, at least for 1 year until 2022, when his term ends. If he still thinks the way he is, where Kenya is, putting a hand and trying to stop Ugandan goods, there's little we can do apart from retaliation. And of course, that kills the whole goodwill. Okay. Now, there's also, so it's not just myself. There's also Rwanda.
So would you do the Brexit thing, where the British just decided to heaven with EU, we're going to be Britain, because I can't say to hell. We're just going to be Britain and then deal with the consequences. Do you just say, let's suspend East African community and thinking that way and push Uganda's interests, and the chips will fall where they may?
The Brexit thing, shall we go through a referendum like they did in the UK to ask Ugandans if they want to get out of the East African community, or shall we go with what has all the paperwork that has been done up to now, which is a lot, by the way.
You are the one running, so what would you do?
And a lot of strides that have been done. I wouldn't want us to go back unless there is complete lack of goodwill, because I think it's in best interest for us to have an East African community, because all over the world, people are converging together to make things, and it helps in so many things. I'll give you an example. Kenya Airlines is struggling. Tanzania is struggling. Uganda is buying new planes. We can have an East African Airlines, one, which will have a lot of routes within East Africa, and so that we manage it better as East Africa, because we're a bigger entity, you understand? So if we have East African Airlines together, then we take away all the great losses that Kenya is suffering, and all the three countries shoulder it. There are so many things we can do together, because even when we decided to do the railway thing, Kenya did their part, Uganda didn't. Okay? So now we are having serious issues because agreements are entered and different countries do not fulfill their end of the bargain. But there is a lot we can do together that we cannot do alone as Uganda. As Uganda would be swallowed up by so many things. I don't think it's going to be very easy for us to run a profitable airline It is going to be a consumer of money like the Uganda Airlines was before it was disbanded. And like all other airlines, even South African Airlines is struggling. I think it was almost ordinary. That might disadvantage so many of Ugandans. That's the honest truth. So maybe we go a bit cautious on it, because even our neighbors have been cautious. Tanzania has been completely blocked out. So our neighbors have been cautious on it. So we are the only ones who are actually opening our markets completely to the East African, goods from East Africa. Maybe we should be a bit cautious on these things, especially that and the labor market. Those are my two biggest issues: the labor market and the entire goods market. Maybe we can classify a certain number of goods where we say, here, let's retain, because this is where we hope to get an advantage. Just retain this a bit for ourselves and retain some autonomy, but in all the others. I don't know how workable that is, but the truth is we can be disadvantaged with those two things, the labor market and the common goods market.
Would you then also, just a second, would you then also want to comment on, because while that is in the works, we've also the African one, the free trade area. Is that the same approach?
Africa free trade, it's like, that's going to be on paper for very, very long. It's going to be very long before we implement that, because Africa is split completely along different lines, along tribal lines, Anglophone, Francophone, then the Arabs and so on. And I've had issues where people, like the French countries, would associate faster with France than they associate with us. For instance, they are importing a lot of foodstuffs, and they will get them from France before they get them from us. Even countries like Equatorial Guinea, where the UPDF are there.
It's more difficult to talk to some of the African countries than talk to Europe. Flights, that's a different thing. Okay? Yeah, it is so difficult for them. So you have to go to Angola, you have to go to Dar es Salaam to get a visa. Angola, then you go to Angola. Now you really have to want to go to Angola. To both of them. So before you get into the common market, certain of those things. There is free movement. At least in East Africa there is. And there is free something. And to add political structures which are in place. That's going to be a dream for so long. So I don't know if I've exhausted you.
Finally,
With the advent of Agenda 26, the East African community has rights by religion. Now, there has been an issue regarding protection and take. What is your stand regarding that the biometrics of Ugandans who are involved in this the registration of their data is safe, but also you're not pursuing that sort of inclusiveness, negating or rejecting the idea of Agenda 2063?
Let me be honest with you. There is nothing Uganda can do to protect its data. Do you want an honest answer? There's nothing. Because, let me come. Because all the software we use, none of it do we have any control over. And data is the biggest commodity in the world right now. And it's bigger than oil, it's bigger than arms, it's bigger than anything. And there are inroads, there are companies here. Forget even about the Agenda 2063 and about the East African passport and the national ID thing, which is also very compromised with all data now being. There is a lot of infringement on the data of Ugandans using multinationals, using companies. That's why there's a reason why data protection is something beyond our league. Let me be honest with you.
So
because
are you saying that as president,
No.
you do not want anything to do with data
No,
protection?
that's not what I'm saying. I'm just giving you a realistic answer. Okay? Now you see, let's say for China to protect its data from American multinationals, the Facebook, the Google, and so on, and Apple and so on, they came up with very, very, very tough walls to protect Chinese data from those people. And they have the technology to come up with those walls, and they have the muscle and the strength. Do we? The answer is no. But we are not going to give our data out on a platter. However, that is a kind of fight you fight, knowing that at some stage it's very difficult, because all these multinationals come here and they have a free reign on data, on everything. The banks we have, almost all of them are international. They have data about money movements and so on. That's a league that is, we are playing in a different league. But I would wish that as president I can put up a wall to protect our data, because it's what actually we are. Because data is everything about us. I would wish that was possible. But let me throw this back at you. Do you think it's possible?
Data protection, one, it requires commitment. From you as the president, you need to come in with the mentality that we can protect our data. Instead of saying that it all depends on big tech. Because with the reformations you seem to highlight into the education system, lessening the period of time from 9, to maybe about 3. The thing as to why, the reason as to why some of these nations exceed and do better than us is that they concentrate so much on research, developing the research skills in their students, but also encouraging independent thinking. And that is where I would love that you commit at least to realizing some of this skill set in the Ugandan, demographic, the students, the people that graduate, and the policy analysts, probably researchers too, so that we know that our data can actually be protected. Because you see, in the African Data Convention, the African Data Protection Convention, it highlights the need for nations to set up national data protection centers.
Yes.
Now, with these national data protection centers in place, of course, it requires a governing law. Uganda recently adopted its privacy and data protection bill,
Yes.
but it falls short on a number of things. You get, like ensuring the independency of the data protection centers. And that is something I would have loved for you to commit to, because you cannot say that Uganda is surely perfect or East Africa is perfect as a region. We know there are problems we have to face. Things that we are enduring right now, like the data of Ugandans is being exploited by big tech. A lot of money we are losing actually a lot of money, because these people, that's how they get their profit. But you cannot just simply say, because it is these foreign corporations that invent the computers we use, it is them who set the standards of ensuring that data is protected, we are going to approach, we're going to pursue a passive approach towards the protection of data.
Just before you answer that, Ismail seems to have something to add to that.
I support what Mr. Joseph Kabuleta is saying. Besides my passion and convocation in sport, I'm an economist who is a news junkie. I think I watch everything that happens in the news. Last year, I was watching a story on Al Jazeera, and I was shocked to see that actually the data and the internet of the African Union is provided by the Chinese government. And this is in Addis Ababa. So I was thinking, what you're raising is actually right. We're in a position where, until we create and innovate our own internet bandwidth that we are not buying from other countries, it's almost impossible to imagine there's going to be a way you're going to protect data. Maybe, let's start with this. What if we had 75% of the banks here Ugandan, or 92% of the telecoms Ugandan? Maybe. That's very possible. But when I saw the African Union, internet provided by Chinese government and all their databases run in Beijing, I'm thinking it's a waste of time.
And so, all the banks,
just a second
foreign,
on that.
all the telecoms foreign.
They're all using Huawei.
But let me assure you, I would love to protect our data. I was just giving you an honest answer. But I would love to read it because it is money. I told you it's the biggest commodity in the world right now, data. It is very big a commodity. I would love for us to be in a position where through our innovators, and we have people who can do that, we start maybe building walls slowly and make it difficult for these people to just come and pick up the data off the street, which is what they have been doing, providing some. Oh, there are so many NGOs here providing all sorts of things, but they are here to get data. And they are not monitored by our government. And we do not have an implementation of that policy, which we even, the one which you say is light, we are not even implementing it in its lightness. So there are NGOs here whose work is just purely to get data. And they are selling data, and they are giving out free, I don't know what, jerry cans or what, small things, but all they want in return is data. And they are selling the data for a lot of money, and we have gone so far down this destructive road that we need, the goodwill is there, I can assure you that. But we need to claw our way back very, very slowly and in a way that is realistic, okay? Because as we said, these countries, now, let me tell you, do you remember the case of this case which made the news of Ham Chigundu and the bank, what
DTB.
bank?
DTB, yes.
And they were saying that, you know, this guy is syndicating a loan here, and it's actually DTB Kenya giving him a loan, yet they have no jurisdiction here and so on, if I followed the case properly. And I'm thinking that that is true for everything. A lot of this country is run from out of this country. Okay? Much of Uganda is run out of Kenya, is run from Kenya, from South Africa, from where there is a lot of syndicating of where Uganda is just like a province, and this government has allowed it to take place. That's the first place I start, because in as much as there might have been issues with that, why do those people come and give a loan here when they don't have jurisdiction? Why don't we start with it? Now that means the profit he pays goes there, not here. That means they evade taxes on the profit of the loan which they are getting, and not here. And now that is just one of so many sectors which are syndicated from other countries, and we are being treated like a province of other countries which are supposedly, you know, bigger than us. And now that cannot happen. We have to have a form of autonomy as a nation, first of all, before even we go and sell ourselves wholesale. So those issues have gone so far deep. When you go into the depth of them, as you have said, and you know, read those stories, you realize that the Chinese just came here and they got everything on a silver plate.
So do I hear you saying, therefore, in response, that you want to fight wars, but you have to choose them very carefully?
Exactly.
Because the Americans, the moment the Chinese built their wall, the Americans put up a fight. And if you're going to fight with big tech and multinational companies, because there will be consequences, you better be sure that you're ready for the consequences. Is that what I hear you saying?
Exactly, because let me tell you, even America, Donald Trump might lose a presidency. It's not yet certified, but might, because of fighting China. They go and sponsor all candidates. They put a lot of money in the election against you. And that's America, the world's biggest nation. But because they played that way, that's how it is. No, actually, Samson has put it so well. You choose your wars what? Carefully. Because there are people whom you cannot, we have gone far down that road. If we hadn't, if these thieves had left government 15 years ago, would be in a very good place, I can guarantee you that, to start a war like that. But now, anyway.
I would like to add a little bit of contribution towards this discussion. I want to encourage us. I want to encourage us in the face of all this. Where we are at right now is what we call the fourth industrial revolution. Most of the time, when Africa was coming into things, like when the Internet of Things started, we got scared and we became consumers. What I would advise for policymakers that are coming on board is to come right now, because the level America is at today in the fourth industrial revolution, China, all of them is the same level we are at today. We have had an opportunity as Africans. We have a team of young Africans that have been organizing something called the blockchain conferences. And these are brilliant kids that have gone to Harvard. And I want to also assure you the manpower that is in Microsoft, the manpower that is around in China. We have Ugandan, African students and African employees over there. If we harness that and we jump on board right now and see that we all go at the same pace and we don't get scared of the fourth industrial revolution, but jump on with cryptocurrency, we study it and get to know what it is, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and we go on to it right now, we have a chance to go into that.
Okay, but let me end by saying this.
Just a second. The question I want to ask the gentleman here is, very honestly,
Mr. Kasumba, sorry to interrupt you, but in the interest of time,
yes,
we are requesting that the rest of the panelists be given 5 minutes each,
Okay.
so that we can keep
okay.
it going.
There are other panelists. And my last question to you is, do you think people who are making money from data here, once you build walls, they'll just watch on, coil their tails and go away? Or do you think there will be a backlash? And how do you plan to deal with that backlash?
The interest to protect the privacy of Ugandan citizens must reign supreme. If it is the president who says, because I am afraid of fighting big tech, I am going to let the privacy of Ugandans be picked up at the riverside, at the shores, by whoever wants, because I do not want to go into war, then it is a representation of a scared individual who is going to be at the helm of the nation. And I don't think we need to adopt that.
Let me tell you something, my brother. If there's anything I can never beat, is scared. But I'm telling you, the will to protect data is with me more than any other Ugandan you can think about. You just know that. More than any other Ugandan you can think about. I know that. So I don't know if you wanted me to tell you that we'll build walls, protect our data. We'll try. That's what I can tell you. Anything else would be what I would call populist answers. Like, how are you going to get jobs? All of you will have jobs, what? That sort of thing. But you see, now, the reason we have the reason we even came here and called somebody with your expertise is because even past this, by the grace of God, let's say I'm president, we have this sort of think tanks where you come and brainstorm and you come up with a policy which the government would adopt.
Okay.
So that it is not just policy of one person. Because there are people who have expertise in all sorts of fields. So you have, now you see they have killed all sorts of think tanks here because there's only one man with a vision. But when we come to a place where we actually value people's input and you come up with very powerful think tanks which are government sponsored, and they come and they, or maybe aided, so to speak, and they come and discuss matters of high interest to the government, and they come up with a policy which is followed. That's how countries develop, not on the minds of one person. That's why we need good leadership, not on the minds of one person. That's just one mind. There are so many minds.
Okay.
Now, quick question.
We will need to finish. There are two more other panelists.
A simple question. I would like to get your policy stand regarding Uganda's federation vis-a-vis your interest to pursue a provincial system of government that you kind of hinted on.
The provincial system.
Yes, and Uganda's federation.
The federal system.
Yes.
That can be discussed. There is nothing wrong with the federal system. By the way, I'm actually in favor of a federal system. When I thought through it, I realized that a federal system is a very good way of getting, services down to the people, where the people are tasked to help the people who of their kind, of their kin is what I meant, and not king, K-I-N. So a federal system is something that I'm favorable to. So if it is passed, I would actually push for it. So if it is passed by the politicians, I would gladly implement it, because we want to divest power away from the office of the president. That's what has brought us to all these problems. We want to divest power because all these regions have wealth of their own, a lot of wealth in all these regions. And now what has happened is the wealth is drawn from one place to another, when all comes to Kampala and is consumed by some people. Now the people who are where the wealth is get nothing. Now if you produce a federal system, those people start by being the first line of beneficiaries from the wealth that God invested in that place. That is a good system, and I'm actually in favor of it. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ivan Wavamuno. I am a lawyer by profession. First is a contribution, just adding to something that my brother Ismail said about sports and investing in the talents. I think if we put a lot more emphasis on talent and capacity building, there would be a lot less pressure on the formal sector for jobs. It would be one very simple way of addressing unemployment and maybe addressing crime as well. So just, yeah, in support of what he's saying. But now specifically for my area of expertise, I have two questions that I'd like to put to Mr. Kabuleta. I'll try to give as much context as the 5 minutes will allow. So my first question is this. Is there any targeted piece of legislation that you will either push or support to address things, maybe to undo some things or to do some things? Maybe just for context and for illustration. For example, the Constitution was amended in 2005, and one of those amendments changed the administrative status of Kampala. It said that Kampala would be a capital city, and then all the other, it would cease to be a district and become a capital city. And then in 2008, the Local Government Act was amended to entrench those adjustments. So it ceased to be a district and it became the capital city of Kampala as an administrative unit. And therefore, the local government legislation was not to apply to it. And then 2 years later, the Kampala Capital City Authority Act was passed. And yeah, that act was basically designed to throw out all other public entities from Kampala and vest all of it in the Kampala Capital City Authority. I bring this just to illustrate the point that legislation, how do I put it? That legislation can have, as in you can start with the end in mind, like that is where I want to go. Let me start putting the enabling laws, because you made it a point that you're going to only act within the existing framework, within the laws. So are there any specific laws that you think will need to be addressed? I think Ismail hinted on sports legislation to support the changes that need to be made in sport. Are there any specific pieces of legislation that you think Uganda needs or that you will support or advance?
She could as well ask.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. My name is Helen Mwezi, and I'm a small business owner. So my question is going to be about what plans you have for SMEs. For example, I opened up a business, Hands of Gold, a bridal business, and unfortunately I started it 1 month before the lockdown. So you can imagine the expenses of startup, and then we have the taxes, URA taxes, the licenses, which we feel unfavorable, especially to SMEs. And we find that we pay the same with the maybe bigger companies, irrespective of size. We're paying the same amount of taxes and licenses required, which will affect, it ends up affecting our pricing. And then another thing is, what plans do you have, especially for people starting out, any innovative programs that you have for small business owners?
Okay, I'll start with yours before I go to Ivan's. The thing is, one of the issues that strangle small business owners like yourself out is all the red tape and the taxation. In ranks of the ease to do business, Uganda, I think, if I remember well, was 118th in the world of ease to do business. That's ranking very bad. I think Kenya was 58th. And I think Rwanda was even better than Kenya, was probably around in the 30s. 36 or 37 of index of ease to do business. So it's very difficult, therefore, to do a business in Uganda, especially if you're a Ugandan. If you're a foreigner, it's much easier. If you're a Ugandan, it is very difficult. And now that's because the system has been set up to make sure that people stay poor and just keep people in their places. That's why even startups have been very difficult to come up with. That's where they will come and choke you with all the taxes before even you get out of your, of your diapers business-wise. And they are choking you with all these taxes. And of course, there is a lot of burden on these people to collect taxes because there are some people who are not paying taxes. Now, the way we are going to reduce taxes, considerably, by the way, considerably reduce taxes without reducing the amount of income the government earns through taxes, is by, number one, removing the untouchables. Now, I can tell you that one man has all coffee licenses, one man's family has all the gold, one man is importing all tiles, is in charge of all gaming, the sports betting and so on. He's in charge of so many things, and you know that man is God Saleh, and he pays zero tax. Zero, no tax. Now, for him to evade tax, they have to get small businesses like yours, like 1 million of them, to squeeze you to make up for the tax which one man would have paid. So now, if we are going to reduce taxes and remove and yet not reduce the amount of money we collect, we are collecting as a nation, we have to first remove those untouchables and make sure everybody pays their fair value in tax. Because we export 1.3 billion of gold, no tax, hardly any tax whatsoever. It's taken, smelted from Entebbe, taken abroad. Dubai, 99% of it taken to Dubai, no tax. So 1.3 billion. So now that means that small people, small traders in Kampala, a small area in Kampala which contributes about 5 trillion shillings in a small square, you can almost run around it, in a short while, contributes 5 trillion shillings in taxes. And they are squeezed. They are squeezed. They will tell you, all the traders will tell you they are suffering with taxes. And the reason is because, number one, our tax base is very small. 80% of Ugandans are not on the tax grid. They don't pay income tax whatsoever. They are too poor to pay. Only 20% pay. And even of the 20%, there are some who are barangira who don't pay. So, and they are the ones who have all the money. So now that leaves other people who are trying to survive down, who include people like you, to pay all the taxes and collect all the 20 or whatever, the projected 21 trillion, or which was reduced to 19 trillion projected taxes in a year. So, how do we change that? Number one, getting rural wealth, people in the villages to become rich through commercialized agriculture, through cooperative societies, bringing them back into the financial game, because they were kept poor because they are the ones who are supposed to keep this government in power. But now we bring them and make them, turn them from peasants, which they have been for 30-something years. They were not peasants before, by the way. They were farming and making money and buying tractors. So we turn them from peasants to some kind of middle class, and then they pay taxes. Then we remove this special caliber of people who think that, the country belongs to them, and they also start giving their fair value of taxes. Then we can afford to reduce taxes considerably for the traders, and yet our tax revenue will most likely double, while people are having less of a burden. It's not rocket science. It is very easy. But, as I told you, the people who have the most money, who are in charge of the most things, are the ones who pay zero tax. You start any business, if it thrives, it starts making money, they will come for it also. And they will take it and they will not pay any tax. And now you go and start something else, and for you pay the tax. Okay? You know that in the scripture, there is where Jesus asked Peter, tell me, Peter, do the kings of this world ask taxes from their children? Then he said, no. Then he said, nonetheless, lest they offended, go and get a fish. You know that scripture.
Yes, I do.
So now, for us, there are no kings of this world. Everybody has to pay taxes. Everybody has to pay taxes. And cut the corruption. You just cut the. There is no country. I was watching all the countries in the list of, tax collection to GDP and all that. The one thing that those countries, the ones which are high and are doing well, the one thing they have is low levels of corruption. Countries like Botswana, once there is high levels of corruption, there will never be service delivery, there will never be, fairness to some people, because the people who try to play straight are the ones who suffer. Those who are crooked are the ones who thrive. So people who try to do things the right way, those ones are the ones who are punished for being honest. So we have to change that, and it's going to change. And we shall reduce taxes for everybody, and yet actually collect twice the amount of taxes we are collecting right now. And I know how. And I could calculate for somebody how, and you will see how. I know exactly how. By making your load very lighter, yet actually we are getting a lot of money as a nation.
Ivan.
So finally, his question, Ivan, is there any particular law that I would want to push? Number one, a number of them, but I will tell you the spirit of the laws I want to push. The first law, the laws I would want to push are those that improve on freedom, generally, freedom of expression, of assembly, and things like that. So, of course, the one law I'd want to target immediately, and I'm sure I will not get any resistance whatsoever, is the law, is the term limit. That one, I'm sure everybody will be in support of it. I don't expect any resistance. And also, there are specific laws, or like even media. The media is the most handcuffed, industry in this country. And I would like to see a free media. I would like to see, because I never saw one when I was a practitioner. Now, I would like to see a free media where they can write anything or say anything about anybody. And they don't have to fear that somebody is going to come and pour salt in their machines and so on, or confiscate their laptops. And we've had all sorts of things. There was a machine there, a printing press, which they poured in salt. I think it was red paper. They went and poured in salt or something like that. Some weird things we've had here. So I would like to see even those ones which we don't, even like those ones, like that one I've mentioned. Let them write whatever rubbish. Let the people decide for themselves that this is rubbish, we shall not read. I want to see a free media. I want to see a free society. I want to see, then there are laws like the coffee law, the sugarcane law, the vanilla law, which I would want to strike down immediately, because they were put there to stop people from earning money from those agricultural, things. So the sugarcane law, very, very unfair. Coffee law, it, very unfair. The vanilla law, I only read it yesterday, by the way. No, the day before yesterday. I read the vanilla law, and I said, who passes a law like this? Like, it is very unfair, and it is meant to make sure people are poor. You have to report this. If you are caught with vanilla, you will be arrested for 6 months. As if vanilla is, you plant your own vanilla, but if you're caught with vanilla, like, it is just a stupid law. And that's how almost all of them are, and they are put there for the purpose of making people poor. Now, I am here. God sent me to make his people rich. Now, I am here to make people rich. And people will be rich, the rural people will be rich, the urban people will be rich by reducing their taxes, reducing all these property taxes, wealth taxes, taxes, which are meant to just keep people down. Tax will not be a means of punishing people. It will be a means of government revenue without punitive. Not this thing of you said something against the government, so they send URA to you for you to squeeze you. No. We shall not have such unfair tax laws. We shall have fair tax laws which are there to make people prosper.
Ladies and gentlemen, give Joseph Kabuleta a big hand clap. I know that certainly Mr. Kabuleta doesn't own this facility. The owners of it probably wanted us out of here yesterday, and that's why you see the MCs here. But I know that I think you have platforms on which those who have questions and contributions can reach you. I think it's been a very educative process. How many of you think that this has been time very well spent? As you can see, thank you so much for that. I'll hand over back to the MCs. Maybe they're here to tell me we have another hour.
Thank you so much, Samson. Thank you all for coming. Mr. President, we have people that have actually been following via Facebook and via Zoom. And maybe before we call upon you to give your parting remarks, you could answer a few things that they have raised. We have Musei Kambeja, who has asked, what will your government do to Ugandans who have been forced into exile? What will your government do to Ugandans who have been tortured and mined by the regime? what are you thinking of truth and reconciliation in Uganda? And then via Zoom, we have Lucy Chihande, who is asking, what is your plan for Ugandans in the diaspora? Briefly, and then we'll have parting.
Okay, first of all, those who have been tortured and maimed, I'm sure they've been to court, and some of them have been awarded money which has not been given. It's been a very expensive venture for our country, torture. And that's one expense we are going to be glad to get away with, because we don't need to do that to anybody. And people, of course, who are in exile. I mean, a government of freedom, no point in exile. And people will come back, and when you know for sure that we have a democratic system, and if you happen to vote Kabuleta in power and you don't want him, you have the opportunity to get rid of him after 5 years. There will be very little need for any of these other things which you see. If we know there is a proper democratic system that you can get rid of leaders you don't want, and get in leaders whom you want. So all these things a lot of these things will be changed. So those in exile, let them look forward, because this government is coming to an end. You can take that to the bank. You can absolutely take that to the bank. Okay? It's coming to an end. So prepare to come back home. Now, to Ugandans in the diaspora, here is my point. I would want us to build a country in 3 years where all of you will be resigning your jobs to come back and work here. So that if you choose to stay abroad, it was not because you have no opportunities back home, but maybe because you prefer their weather or whatever it is that you have there. But at least we have, but at least we shall have something for you to come back home to. But now, there is nothing. There is nothing attractive. But then also, they send their money here. But we want their input, their brains. Because you see, when you've been in an organized society, for 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, and so on, there are certain things you can bring to us here. There are certain ideas we want from you. Come and tell us, how can we organize our society like those ones where you have been? So we get those people. We've been taking their money. We need their money, 1.5 billion, 1.3 billion, 1.2, I think the last time, before COVID, $1.2 billion, a lot of money. But we don't need their, we have been telling them, keep your brains there, bring the money. Now we are telling them, bring your brains, but also the money we want it, but also your brains, okay? Come and tell us how we can organize our society, and we make it comfortable for somebody like you who has been in those countries to come back home, and you're comfortable and say, this is the kind of place that I can come back to, where there is enough social security, there is a good health sector, your children can go to good schools, and you're confident that they are having proper education, and you can have a good job. That's the kind of country we want, so that you're proud of Uganda. Even if you go back, at least you're proud. When you come back on Christmas or in December, whatever, you come back and you look at Uganda and you're a proud person. That's what I can say to them.
I'm not so sure about any one of those liking that weather. At the time I was in that weather,
they don't like it.
It forced me back.
Actually, I say that sarcastically.
True to you. Mr. Kabuleta, your parting shot.
My parting shot is everything we start with, because somebody asked me about what you do about Uganda's debt burden. I say Uganda's debt burden is one thing, but our people's debt burden is another. Uganda is borrowing money at not very big interest rates. Ugandans are borrowing money at huge interest rates, which are not, they're not feasible. You cannot borrow money at 25% and think you're going to do anything. You're just walking straight into slavery.
My mortgage is 17%.
17%.
The most immediate French ambassador told me that their mortgage in a first world country is between 2 and 4%.
Now imagine that. Why are we having such huge interest rates? Why can't we have something proper? So my issue is, we have to start by putting money in people's pockets and make them less vulnerable to banks, banking institutions, and foreign banks. We also have to start our own banks here. We have only one indigenous bank, Centenary Bank. We have 4 Kenyan banks here. 1 Ugandan bank, Centenary. We have to have enough credit here. You see, when I read the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, it talks about the blessings and the curses. Now, one of the curses, it's in verse 43, it says, foreigners shall come into your country, and they will grow and become bigger and richer, while you, the people of the country, become poorer and poorer. Now it's like Uganda has been under a curse because we've seen foreigners coming with nothing and becoming richer, while we, the owners of the country, are actually becoming poorer. So that's one thing I'm going to change. I'm going to make sure that and then it goes on to say in the next verse 44 that the foreigners shall lend to you, but you shall not lend them. That's why I tell you all the banks here are foreign. So it's almost like we are living that curse, okay, of foreigners coming and growing and for us to become small, and then they lend us, we do not lend them. Now we have to change that. We have to move from curse to blessing, okay? Blessing means we are in charge of our country. If a foreigner comes here, he works for us, okay? He works for a Mokasa, for a Yaruhanga, for an Okelo, or what. So you're hiring people to come and work for you, not the other way around, okay? We have to get to that place where we are the real custodians of our country, and where we do not hand everything away to foreign people. So, and we can do this. That's why my group is called Reclaiming Our Country and Our Kin. The word kin comes from brotherhood. Now, I'll tell you this, in this campaign, I have seen that there are very many seeds of tribalism that are being sown, and they are very dangerous.
Sure.
Very, very dangerous. Now, let me tell you something. Don't allow seeds of tribalism to grow. That's why I'm saying we are reclaiming our kin. When people are oppressed, they start finding things which divide them. But we're actually the same people, regardless of what your tribe is. You see? Now, I was in a certain place and talking to some people in a ghetto, and these are my campaign managers, and one of them said, you know, I said, shut up. So I said, now I called another person, and now, actually, I didn't even call him. Another person stood up to speak. And he was actually, he told us, all of us, the whole group, we were about 150 people. He told us he went to join the Bush War in 1993. He fought, he finished, he has never been paid his money. He left the army, he's grassing, his children are hungry, he's grassing. Guess what tribe he is? A Munyankore. So I said, now, you see this man, he's a Munyankore like you, like, no, you know, like, but he's as broke as you.
Yeah.
He's as broke, he's as what? It is just one family. Don't victimize a tribe. Okay? It is just a few people, not a tribe. So please, those things can be very dangerous, and I see them, I've seen them, there are some stations I've been chased away from because of my tribe. And it is not good. Let me tell you something. If we are not, we can go down a very bad path. We have to be ready to stick together as Ugandans when this country, when we have gotten rid of these people. We have to be able to stick together as a country, because you cannot, how do you victimize a tribe? They are suffering like, how many of them have you seen on the streets? You ask the security guards, you'll find some of them are from the so-called, No, it's not that. It's just a few people. Just a few people. And even those we are not in for, victimization, what? No, we'll just take all privileges away and tell them, now you're ordinary Ugandans. Don't tell us about a bush war you fought 35 years ago. Now you're as ordinary as ordinary. You have to go through the traffic, sit in the lights, wait for the traffic policeman to wave you, no passing the opposite route, no passing passing on the right. Because so we take those privileges, but we are not going after anybody or anybody's family. So if you want anger and belligerence and busungu, find another candidate. If you want development and putting together and wealth, you have a candidate in me. Okay? But that belligerence, that vitriol, okay? Vindictiveness, which I am hearing, some people down there, that one is, I do not stand for it. There is nobody who will feel victimized in my government because of tribe or anything like that. We are building our kin, our Seruganda, you see. Now, we are all brethren. That's the kin. So we are reclaiming our country and our kin. So those are my parting words. So if you want a candidate who actually starts building, who is not just focused on removing this person, because he's going. But now, after that, what? If you want somebody who has thought through that, you have a candidate in me. If you want somebody who is going to be safe for every tribe, you have a candidate in me. If you want somebody who is going to develop all regions of the country and give people freedom and what, you have a candidate in me. If you want to go and start attacking people's houses after you're in power, I'm sure there are candidates you can go to. You will not do that under my government. Thank you very much.
And if you want a moderator, then you've got one. Cranwell, put your hands together to Cranwell Company Limited for putting this together. I hope that campaign teams out there looking for spaces for your candidates, an establishment has come here to change the way politics is done in the country and political conversation. I think that this is not the last one that we are having. There will certainly be a few more. And I cannot add more to what he has said. I think it's been a fantastic expenditure of time. For those of you who've been online, thank you so much. For those of you who've been watching at home, thank you so much. And I know that Mr. Joseph Kiza Kabuleta is still on the campaign trail. Ours is to hope and wish that the best candidate will be winning. And we will know from these conversations who it is that is the best. That is the beauty of hearing them all. And from me and everybody here, it is good night. It's about time for me to return to my 3 daughters. Until then, it is back to the MCs.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all for making time. I don't think I have anything useful to add. Maybe I'm just going to request the panelists and experts that were invited to come and join His Excellency on stage for a little photo shoot, and then we'll call it a day.
Let's try to have that happen so fast. If you'd like to contribute to the message that Mr. Kabuleta has shared, at the exit you'll find people that will help you. If you want to contribute in any way, thank you so much for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, if at this time we're going to have more photos taken with His Excellency, so let's do that quickly. Let's come over to the stage, take a photo with His Excellency. It will be important in posting and spreading the message of reclaiming our country. And let's try to do that so fast. Well, we need to leave this place.
Because we're up, we're really building on it, rock. Building on us, not sand, that's all. Welcome to the Rock Nation.
Uganda. Katya kale byefuna alunda. Kabuleta ngaleta. Mamba wagiro wenkanya alunda. Kabuleta ngaleta. Ulina wedizensi yafe. Pena tuganyule mu byefuna byafe. Tulina wedizensi yafe. Tewera biro wase Uganda wafe. Amasanyalaze gasibuka kijja kitaba mukubayo nga tibagabonaku kalera banti n'ebikajjo bye babiri macoka bamu banywa kacai na sukali aziramu mubende mwabalina kukolodi naye kiki kye mwekoleddewo mukolodi bwe wetegereza abafunye mugolodi bagwira bannansi ffe tuli bapakasi kyembadde teesa kikulu n'otubeko bye tukyusa Kabuleta ono gwe tuba tuleeta eddembe n'obwenkanya byaleeta yatugambye tugenda kuganyulwa ne mu mafuta gaffe tugenda kugabana era yagambye yagenda kutumbula n'ebyenfuna wano tugenda kunyumirwa tulina okwedizensi yaffe pena tuganyulwe mu byenfuna byaffe tulina okwedizensi yaffe tewera biro wase Uganda waffe bawoza kimumbu baleetedde embe ne beerabire buto zaffe tezirya ddembe kikati bwe tuba tulina emirembe batuwene ku kagati tukagaba n'emirembe abaze wano mukama bwe ntumwebaza yatuwa ebyobugagga ensi neerola ekyembi ebibala tewe byawera abakulu be babiri abalala tetwafuna ebyobugagga ndabanga ebyesulize I'm